Good afternoon. It's November 3rd, 5 o'clock, and we're here to kick off, 4 o'clock. Got to change that clock on the back wall. We're here to kick off the Glendale Water and Power Commission meeting. We'll start with the roll call.
Before I proceed with the roll call, for the record, Commissioner Flanagan will not be attending today's meeting. Item number 1, roll call. President Fay.
Here.
Commissioner Armenian.
Present.
Commissioner Avedian.
Here.
Commissioner Avedian.
Here.
Commissioner Avanesian.
Yes.
Item number 2, consent items. Approval of the October 6, 2025 meeting minutes.
Any commissioners have any notes or changes on the minutes? If not, we'll entertain a motion to adopt as written.
I'll make a motion to approve. Second.
Item number 3, Glendale Water and Power Commission and staff comments.
Would anyone else like to make an announcement or share something with the group?
I don't have any.
Okay. Mr. Mellon, it's all yours.
Thank you, President Fay. I don't have anything specific to discuss. I know we have a pretty full docket of presentations, so I'm ready to get going if you'd like to.
All right, let's dive in.
Item number 4, oral communication with 5 minutes. We do not have any speakers at the moment. Item number 5, reports and information. Item number 5A, legislative update.
Good afternoon, President Fay, commissioners, staff. Have a few slides for you all to just tell you about what we've been working on the past few months since our last update back in May, I believe. For one, end of May, we had a trip to the Hoover Dam with Metropolitan Water District and the City of Santa Monica. We drove down the Colorado River to the intake at Lake Havasu. Commissioner Avedian was with us, as was then Chair Bazemore from the Sustainability Commission. I think it was a pretty successful trip. After that, last week, we had a tour of water reuse sites in Los Angeles County, the Las Virgenes Tranfo Pure Water Demonstration Facility out in Calabasas, as well as the jointly operated Napolitano Pure Water SoCal Innovation Center in Carson, operated by Metropolitan Water District and LA County Sanitation Districts. We had a pretty full group, about 22 of us, including some of you, a sustainability chair, and members of our SWAG committee, our Sustainable Water Advisory Group. In the meantime, until the next legislative session begins in January, we're working on attending the planning meetings with Metropolitan, Southern California Public Power Authority, with SCAPA, CMUA, and Aqua. So we'll be discussing our unique legislative priorities as well as collective legislative priorities of the member agencies. This year, the California legislature introduced 2,397 bills, about 2,400, 864 in the Senate and 1,533 in the Assembly. 936 Assembly bills passed, 61% of those introduced. 600 Senate bills passed, 69% of those introduced. Governor Newsom signed 794 into law and vetoed 123 of them, so it was a pretty successful legislative year, more than anticipated. Some of the bills that I wanted to look into is AB 1207, which reauthorizes cap and trade now as cap and invest. It recognizes the existing regulations governing POU free allowances and gives gas corporation allowances to electric utilities. This is by Assemblymember Irwin. She was appointed by the governor to lead a 17-member Assembly working group to address cap and trade and its reauthorization. She represents the Pacific Palisades, so she's very familiar with the impacts of the wildfires and how important this is for public utilities. The partner bill with this, which I have not listed here, but is SB 840, and it overhauls the Cap and Invest program and allocates billions in the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, the GGRF, to various climate initiatives. It gives $1 billion to high-speed rail. It also is allocating $800 million into sustainable communities and affordable housing and transit programs, and $200 million to low carbon transit operations programs. Allocates $250 million for community air protection programs, $200 million for healthy forest and fire prevention programs conducted by CAL FIRE, and $130 million to the Safe and Affordable Drinking Water Fund. Next bill is, excuse me, drop my paper. SB 254 by Senator Josh Becker. Senator Becker chairs the Senate Committee on Utilities and Communications, so he's very familiar with this topic. It establishes a transmission infrastructure accelerator to develop strategies for financing and developing eligible transmission projects. It creates a mechanism to replenish the state's wildfire fund, 50% from IU shareholders, 50% from IU ratepayers. So while not directly impacting us, it benefits the state at large. And as you know, fires in IU territories can eventually spread into POU territories. It facilitates undergrounding and removes some CEQA underground, puts in some CEQA exemptions for undergrounding projects by the IUs. POU wildfire mitigation plans submitted at least once every 4 years on a schedule determined by the Wildfire Safety Advisory Board. So it gives us 4 years to submit our wildfire mitigation plan instead of the current once a year. He also authored SB 540, which was transitioned into AB 825, the Pathways Bill, which implements Step 2 of the West-wide Governance Pathways Initiative and allows CAISO and the IUs to join a market governed by an independent regional organization subject to specific requirements. AB 1410, these two are smaller energy bills, but could have an impact, and I think we're ahead of the game in both of these areas. So AB 1410 by Assemblymember Robert Garcia requires POUs whose systems are capable to auto-enroll customers in outage alert notifications, and to do so by March 2026. Other POUs have until March 2026 to maximize auto-enrollment as appropriate as feasible. If cost-effective, POUs must execute the plan during their next system upgrade or by 2030. Customers must have an opportunity to opt out except for required and/or essential notifications. So overall, I think it's a pretty reasonable bill, and we already have a similar system in place. AB 777 is by Assemblymember Celeste Rodriguez, who is just west of us in the eastern San Fernando Valley. It requires utilities to designate a point of contact to respond to the Department of Social Services. Utilities must make a reasonable effort to respond within 7 days to requests by the Department of Social Services, and the data requested will include, but not be limited to, dates of power outages lasting for 4 or more hours, duration of hours, counties affected, zip codes affected, and for each zip code, total number of customers and number of customers affected by the outage. The Department of Social Services shall timely notify POUs of any changes to federal requirements in data collection. So this is supposed to be to help individuals who may be impacted by power outages. And again, we don't necessarily collect this data, so we have to see how we'd go about collecting this data in a very specific way with zip codes, number of customers per zip code, and how many were affected among those living in that set zip code. AB 1319 by Assemblymember Nick Schultz, our Assemblymember. CMUA and SCAPA opposed this because they believed it would cause additional work from our staff and cost the state and agencies money. So in essence, this bill would amend the California Endangered Species Act to authorize the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to deem a species as a provisional candidate species if it finds that a federal action that occurs after January 19th, 2025 results in a decrease in protection for that species and is listed under the CESA, could provide protection for that species. This was done in retaliation of the Trump administration's lessening of certain regulations and national parklands. So this is California's way of kind of attempting to combat that, but it has a consequence on especially water agencies. So the process of deeming endangered species a provisional candidate would be done without public notice, appeal, or comment process. The bill would likely lead to uncertainty for permittees and the potential for extensive delays in implementing projects and maintenance activities on water infrastructure. So the legislature reconvenes on January 5th. It's the second year of the 2-year session. So we will be heading up to Sacramento and then later on to Washington, D.C. early next year, ahead of all the chaos in the reconvening of the session. So hopefully we'll be able to have good chats with our members in the state capitol and federal capitol and get our needs across. Thank you.
Commissioners, any questions on this one?
Yeah, on SB 254,
Mhm.
can you expand a little bit about what our position has been as a city and GWP, as well as how we might be planning to participate in the report, which I believe is due in April, which will help define kind of what the next steps are as a result of that bill?
For the wildfire mitigation plan?
254, yeah. Affordability, transmission, and wildfire.
Yeah, so I believe that we're already in talks about our wildfire mitigation plan. I'm not fully entrenched in the conversation, but I've been CC'd on the emails, and I know that our electric engineering department's already working on that.
Working on what, sorry?
Are working on the plan, yeah.
The plan,
Yes,
the wildfire mitigation plan?
yes.
My question is more specifically about the report, which is part of the bill. So California Earthquake Authority is the one leading the effort to put together that report that will define what additional legislation will likely happen in the next part of the session, having to do with things that do affect the POUs. For example, the potential for a POU wildfire fund, kind of like there is the IOU version of it, to help with liabilities, potential liabilities from wildfires that might be caused by POU infrastructure. So I was just wondering if, I don't expect that we've done anything with it yet, but we don't have a whole lot of time between now and April to contribute to that discussion. So just wondering if there are plans to contribute to it in any way.
So, Commissioner Armenian, yes. I mean, obviously, we're keeping our ear to the ground about how this is going to evolve over time. The knee-jerk reaction right now for whether or not there's a benefit to having a POU fund is really about how it's going to get funded, right? The IOU fund, like many things that our government sets up, things that work well in the IOU world don't necessarily translate to the POU world, and I think this is an example. The IOU has much more leeway to increase rates and kind of roll in that infrastructure for the fund than POUs. If there's a discussion about how to mitigate that exposure or how to manage the liabilities associated with the fires, or at least cap, those are kind of conversations that we might be involved in. I know that there's some of that conversation already starting, so we're looking at it. Obviously, we want to be aware of what our risks and exposures are associated with wildfire, especially since we jointly own a lot of facilities. It doesn't mean that we are jointly managing them and operating them. So there's kind of a fine line there about how, if you operate it, are you liable? Or if you own it, if you're liable. And usually it goes to who has the deepest pockets. So that's the kind of thing that we would be looking into.
Thank you.
Which of these bills do you think has the most significant direct impact on GWP customers?
I would say the reauthorization of the Cap and Invest program, AB 1217, was it?
And are we
1207.
a net contributor or a net recipient to that program? Is that funding some of the innovative projects we're doing, or are our customers paying into that fund?
It could. I mean, from what my understanding is that we do receive benefits from that, yes.
We're definitely a net
Yeah.
receiver, we'll put it that way. Yeah, we do realize the benefits of it. The way the structure is set up and kind of some of the changes, there's still a question about the gas side of this, but overall, we benefit from it.
And I believe, just remembering the acronym, some of these programs are paying for things like electric buses for the B line and some of our electric vehicle charging programs, and those are the kinds of things that are paid for by this program?
Well, let's see, there's LCSF, and then there's the dollars we would do from these recs, and they're kind of different groups of money, but in the end, yes, ultimately, we find ways to make it work for everyone.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much for the report.
I have a question. On page 3, this upper slide is not, first of all, is not readable. And then this data here is supposed to have some numbers there, for example, hours and this sort of thing, or this is like general
I'm sorry.
measures.
Which page?
We're looking at AB 777.
Yeah, AB 77.
I'm not sure what the question was, I'm sorry.
First of all, it's not readable. Okay? My second question is, there are some data, for example, it says hours, but there is no number there. Was there supposed to be a number there?
No, so for the bullet points, says dates of power outages lasting 4 or more hours, and duration in hours if it was how many hours it was.
Commissioner Evanesian, the bullet points are actually elements that are going to be part of the data requests for the overall report. So there's no specific values associated. It's just elements that are going to be part of the overall data request.
So data was requested. Was there any response to that?
No, for this one, no. This is a bill that just recently got signed into law. So those are the requirements that are going to be rolled into the future data requests. And they're going to, so there's no specifics to this yet. And it would be relevant to each individual IOU and POU.
Or later on, we are going to see that?
So later on, there will be data associated to it as soon as we have the qualifications for what the form of the data report comes in.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions or comments? Great. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Up next, we have Chris Lonate and Arpine Lumian for the customer service update.
Sorry, my microphone was not on. Today's presentation will be in 2 parts. I'll be walking you through our statistics for telephone calls, walk-in transactions, web contacts, and how those customer interactions compare. I'll also share an update of the telephone system upgrade and some of the features the new system will offer. My counterpart here with us today, Arpi Adlamian, will review the utility bill redesign and give an update of the status of that project after my presentation. To the next slide. In the first quarter, we already received a little over 30,000 calls. Based on that pace, we are projecting an overall increase of 120,000 calls by the end of the fiscal year. A big part of the increase came from the seasonal high bill increase we typically see between July and September, as well as the recent upgrade to the MyGWP portal. Even though we sent out notifications and posted announcements on our website regarding the new launch, as well as provided customers instructions on how to reset their account access, many customers still miss some of those messages and contacted our office for assistance when logging in to their account for the first time. Our call handle goal is to answer 95% of the calls we offered. We completed the first quarter handling 88% of the calls offered. The average customer wait time is to be at 1 minute or less. Our wait times did go up a bit. Customers waited a little longer to reach a live representative, a little over 3 minutes. Here again, this was due to the higher call volume and just calls themselves taking a little bit longer. Even our call handle time went up slightly over our goal of 5 minutes. For our walk-in customers, this part is divided into 2 parts. Some customers come into the office because they prefer to make their payment with us in person, and the second part would rather come into the office and speak to a live representative to discuss their utility bill or their account. Our online contacts also increase. This is due to the upgrade of My GWP. Many customers used our online access to seek assistance with their online accounts, such as password resets or their login user ID. We were able to respond to 81% of web inquiries within 48 hours. Although we saw an overall increase in customer contacts, we're hopeful that this is just a temporary phase and not only driven by our high bill time, but also due to the platform upgrade. Next slide. In this slide, we show how customers chose to contact us. 61% still prefer to communicate with us over the phone, making this the most popular way of communicating with us. The second most frequent type of contact are those customers that walk into our lobby at 28%. Here we divided it into 2 categories, as I stated before. 21% are those customers that come in to make a payment, and 7% are those customers that come into the lobby to discuss their utility bill with a live representative. Customers do use our online options as well. Those account for about 11% of our contacts. While we prefer customers to have a higher interest with our available online services, customers continue to prefer the more personal touch with a live rep. Next slide. For our telephone upgrade, we're making great progress here. On the new phone system, our team has been working closely with IT technicians, and we've already had a chance to see a live demo of this, how the system works. This is a citywide project, and the rollout for customer services is planned for January. We're really looking forward to it. It should be great for not only our team, but a great benefit and enhancement for the customer. Some of the features include a placeholder callback option. So if a customer doesn't want to wait on hold, they can keep their place in line and receive a callback. The estimated wait time provides an approximate time, giving customers a better idea of how long they'll be on hold. There's also a live chat option with a representative. This would be a completely new feature for us, and we're hoping that customers will use that as another avenue to reach us. Additionally, after every chat or phone call, customers will have the ability to take a short survey to share their feedback on how we did. This concludes my presentation, Commissioners. I will now pass the second part of my presentation, to Arpine Alamian, unless you have any questions for me at this time.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Varujan Avadian. If you can go back to slide number 3, please. So as you mentioned, the wait times have increased.
Yeah.
And because of the basically more customer calls coming in. But is that just because of the number of calls, or do we have any resource issues as well?
No, right now it's just because of the number of calls. It was just due to the new platform upgrade to the My GWP. Customers did not, they didn't receive, maybe some of them didn't receive the notification that we were upgrading the platform. It could be because they didn't update their email address at the, in a proper time. Others just missed it and had to call in to get re-enrolled into our auto payment, or also just to access their account due to a password change or their user ID. Also, that's also in combination with our high bills increase. And during these time of July through September, we do get a lot of inquiries in regards to high bill, as why their bills are so high, or they need a payment arrangement, things of that nature.
All right. And when you mention platform, you're talking about the portal, right? Online
Yes.
portal? Okay.
The MyGWP online portal.
All right. And if you go to slide number.
Can I touch on something there, just when we're talking about it? So it seems like in this first quarter, there were two very discrete drivers of increased call volume that, have you seen those have already started to tail off? Are we still getting lots of calls about the portal upgrade? I mean, I imagine we're not getting summer bill calls anymore.
I'm seeing them starting to tailor off on the online platform. The high bills, remember that high weather, we still saw some of that in September, so that is still billed in the October month. I did look at our stats this morning, and we are probably about 1,000 calls less than what we received last month.
So we're seeing it trail off a little bit.
Yes,
Okay.
slowly.
So I think maybe the projection that we've got here for the full fiscal year is a little bit high. It looks like we're just taking what is this one quarter that was very busy, exceptionally busy, and extrapolating it linearly. Probably the next 3 quarters won't be as busy as the first one. Is that?
We're hoping.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm hoping.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It might be worth noting that the rate increase went in effect on November 1st, while it wasn't
That's
a significant rate increase by comparison because it was the low season.
Yeah.
It may still be a point of conversation with customers.
And slide number 4, just a quick question. The stats that you have here, it's specifically for customer service section, has nothing to do with the water service planning or electric service planning, correct?
Right. It's specific to customer service.
Do we keep track of those statistics on the service planning side or not?
I don't know.
Chair Fay, Commissioner, staff, probably Don Scorza will be a better person to answer that. What I understand is that the teams are working on a extensive, comprehensive 5-year plan, and which should be provided to the general manager. Then in return, at some point, I assume we can share it with the commissioner for review, blessing, and all that. So I think they're working on that plan.
That's
I mean, specifically, my question is, as far as developers coming into the customer service counter, have you guys seen a surge or pretty much flat or dropping down?
Yeah, Commissioner Fay, Commissioner Avedian, we do keep track. There was a surge of increase. Again, it has to do with the electrification, right, of the city. So we do track that. We do use our system that with our community development department, Intergov. So a lot of the permitting process goes through that first. So we do see the aftermath. And when there's an upgrade to our system, they come to us to provide that service. So there has been an increase from years ago. We still are high. We do track it. But we do meet the deadlines set by the Intergov system. So we do not, I don't know if we publish it publicly, but we do have the statistics of how many permits and processes that we do monthly and per year, so.
Okay. Yeah, I would say probably next time when we're doing a presentation like this, it'll be great to see that as well, if possible. If not, it's fine. So as far as going back to the resource question, how are we keeping up with the demand? Are we good? Are we falling short? Do we need, how are we doing with resources on that?
Well, over the last few years, we have become better at it, so the time does go down. We call it meter spots, where we go out there to the customer site and do physical reviews and then recommend the changes to their system, if any. So we've become better at it. So times have gone down. Sometimes I believe when we were originally right after COVID, we were at 12 weeks. We're down to 6 weeks or less. So we've made vast improvements on the permitting and also the meter spots that we do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, I have a question. These calls, all of them are in English, or we have a translator if somebody talks in Armenian or Spanish? Is there a translator there?
Yes, so we do have employees that speak the Armenian language or Spanish speaking, and our phone system actually queues up calls into the different splits assigned for the different languages.
Do you have percentage of these different languages by any chance?
I'm sorry?
Percentages of the different
Oh,
calls
you
for
know,
the
I
languages.
did not bring those with me, but the next time I can definitely do that because it is something we do track.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to build on that. It would also help to see a breakdown of, I don't know if you track it by issues of what the different calls are. We're getting calls, higher number of calls in certain issue areas versus.
Yes, we do track
others.
that as well.
Yeah, and I think I wanted to build on the question about resource. I may have misinterpreted, but I thought the question was also about resources in terms of handling the increased calls. Are we just making do with what we've had, or have we added resources to deal with it? Or do we need to add resources to deal with it?
So I think I'll take this one. So we have two different areas we're discussing. First, one was permitting and one is customer service.
Yep.
We have seen an influx in customer service. We're hoping that it tapers off. Obviously, we don't have the flexibility to ramp up personnel in the customer service side to support that. There's a bit of training that everyone goes through. We want to make sure that our customers are getting the type of interaction that we would expect from them. So we can't just put people in. On the permitting side, obviously, we'll need to take a look at that and come back to you with some additional information. That's probably worth having a conversation more in depth with the commission, because resources are an issue. There's been a fair amount of scaling back in the past, and we're in the process of building back up. Whether or not that means we need additional people, or whether or not that means we need the right systems or the right processes is the question that we're looking at right now. So we're in full review of those scenarios.
Thank you.
No problem.
Crystal, do you have a sense of why customers prefer the phone so much, despite our efforts to encourage them to contact us other ways?
You know, I think it's just their preference. Honestly, I've been in the lobby. There's times where in these last few months, we've had a full house in the lobby, and I've gone out to the public myself to see, you know, you can pay your bill online, I can show you, but they just don't want to. They don't want to use it. And a lot of it too is we do get a lot of senior citizens walking into the lobby. We do get a lot of customers that don't speak the English language as well. So I think that's part of it. And I just think that when it comes down to talking about their bill and why my bill is so high, and to really understand that kilowatt use and how it impacts the bill, I think the customer just really wants that. They want to hear it. They want an explanation as to why. And giving them the tips on the website, or you know, they can now even see the real-time usage. It's just not enough for them. They want that explanation. What can they do? Why is it so high? Explain it to me.
Sure. Talk about resources. Introducing live chat as a feature is great. Certainly people in my generation who are allergic to telephone calls would much prefer a live chat.
I agree.
However, it's not free, it's not easy, and it's going to increase the demand on your team a lot. We've implemented this at my company. We thought about it. We didn't do it because of that. We wouldn't be able to keep up with the volume, and then we did it. Do you guys have a sense of what the coming wave of demand would be, and are there different skill sets or people that need to support that?
Right now, no, we don't have a sense of it. I would imagine that it would be a high volume, and that's something we'd have to discuss with Scott and Steve and see what our game plan will be there. And I do think that it does require a different skill set in writing, especially. So I think definitely it would.
Yeah, I think we could easily get surprised by that, and what we think is a great benefit, a new feature we're offering, actually comes back to bite us if we're not ready. So I would kind of take a look at that one and make sure that we're anticipating it. And when I think the next time we do a customer service update, what I'm hearing from the fellow commissioners is that we need to take a more holistic view of who our customers are, not just the businesses and residences that pay a bill or maybe have questions about their bill. I understand that's the main focus of your presentation, but really every interaction we have with somebody in Glendale, whether they're trying to get a solar panel system connected or they're trying to get a new apartment building permitted, they're all customers, and all of those touch points reflect on people's perception of our agency. So I think the next time we do a customer service update, it would be great to get a more comprehensive view and see what some of those benchmarks and KPIs are for those other touch points.
I think, thank you for that, President Fay. I think the customer interaction premise, if we were to discuss all our customer interactions, we'd be here for 4 or 5 hours. There's quite a bit to discuss. I think breaking it down into bite-sized bits so we can actually get into the details, as I believe you gentlemen are all interested in getting into the details, is probably a better approach. But I understand what you're asking, and I think we'll take that approach when we address the permitting discussion, give you guys an opportunity to dig into it also. But I agree. There's many facets, many different ways that we interact with our customers, and even the definition of customer is different, really. It's not just who pays bills.
Yeah, and I think as we increase rates for reasons we've talked long about, there comes with a higher sensitivity from customers that are they getting what they're paying for? And I think somebody who might have tolerated a certain hold time 2 years ago, now that their rates are going up a certain percent, like, oh, well, this is crazy, So I think we need to be mindful of that as well and make sure people feel like they're getting what they paid for.
Yeah, we will always attempt to maintain our concierge service as we do now.
Great. And then as we get into other technologies, whether it's phone or live chat, there are lots of tools to scale and ramp up and kind of handle the surges, whether it's having, calls routed to a call center first for the initial screening, and then once they kind of get sorted, they come back to the trained people, or it's an AI bot that does the first, there's some of these questions maybe can be answered automatically. We could extend the service hours. We could handle additional languages that we don't have trained staff for, but we probably have customers who speak other languages. There's a lot of other technologies that we can invest in. So,
yeah.
Definitely.
Great. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the second part of this.
Thank you.
I have a question. I'm just suggesting to do some training for customers how to use their cell phones, because many people have cell phones, but they don't know how to use it. The other thing is, not many people have computers. There maybe there could be a centers, I don't know where, with computers and training for them to use that. If they have computer, to be trained how to use that. So I'm suggesting to train customers for that.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Avanesian. What we have actually discussed the idea of having a computer or laptop customer facing right near or any of our alcoves, any place where a customer comes up to the front, so we can walk them through the ability to do some of this stuff online themselves and kind of get them familiar with it. We have some cybersecurity issues we have to deal with in the premise and anything that we set up like that, but we're playing with the idea of making a terminal available to the public so that they can use our equipment to access and put things in. We just got to make sure that we can maintain the security for it, not just from us, but also for each customer that comes to that terminal. So we are looking at that. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Good afternoon, President Fay and GWP commissioners. My name is Arpina Lumian, and I'm the GWP Customer Service Operations Manager. I'm excited to walk you through the new bill redesign. During this presentation, I will cover the key updates, what's changing and why, and how it will benefit both our team and our customers. Before I go into details, I would like to note that this was a collaborative group project. Our internal teams, particularly those who work closely with our customers, provided their valuable insights based on their deep understanding of the information customers seek on their bills and the common questions that prompts them to call in. We gathered detailed feedback from those frontline staff to ensure the redesigned bill is clear, informative, and aligned with customer expectations. Additionally, we reviewed billing formats from other utility companies to identify the best practices and incorporated those insights into our own bill. The objective of this bill redesign is to provide clarity by using simplified customer-friendly language, streamline content layout, eliminate redundancy, provide transparency on rate calculations by providing detailed breakdowns of charges, and rate information. Assist customers to better understand their charges by itemizing costs and showing rate calculations clearly. Decrease customer contact on bill explanation by presenting accurate, accessible billing information. Here is the first page of our current bill, and on the next slide, we have the new bill design. I'll be tagging between the two slides. My original goal was to have both our current bill and newly designed bill displayed side by side on one slide so the changes would be easier to compare. However, the text ended up too small to read clearly, so I separated them instead, but each one of you got a hard copy of the new bill. All changes on the current bill are crossed out in red, while the new changes on the new bill are highlighted in pink. First page of the bill, we have made cosmetic updates and can we go back one? First page of the bill, we have made cosmetic updates and removed redundant information. For example, the fax number has been removed as customers no longer use it for communication purpose. Address and hours of operations have moved from the bottom of the page to the top of the bill for better visibility. The account summary has been clarified with clear distinction between current charges and the total balance due. The payment options section has been streamlined in a concise bulleted format instead of a paragraph presenting greater clarity. All available payment methods are clearly outlined, giving a cleaner appearance. Now let's move on to the second page of the bill. The current bill lacks detailed explanation and rate transparency, which creates more customer inquiries. On the current bill, the fax number, again, it's crossed out since it's no longer in use. The term operating cost has been removed from the sewer charge. In the new bill design, the charge is divided into two components, sewer flat and sewer usage. The city utility users tax and the surcharge have been reformatted for clarity. The old format is crossed out, while the new format provides a new detailed breakdown with effective dates and rates. Our new bill design, it presents more customer-friendly appearance with clear section divisions, detailed breakdown of charges, explicit rate information, including effective dates. It provides a transparent presentation of how each charge is calculated. Charges on the new bill are itemized with specific rate details. It breaks down charges by rate categories with exact rates, effective dates, and usage units. It separates the charges by rate code with days counted. Although the new bill looks more detailed at first glance, its comprehensive layout makes it easier for customers to understand their charges. The result is more user-friendly bill that better serves our customers while also helping reduce our overall contact. This concludes my presentation of the bill redesign. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
I'm just going to jump in here and happy to get other comments, but I think this totally misses the mark. I don't want this to be mean or harsh, but this is moving in the wrong direction. This is harder to understand. It's less clear. There's more jargon. I think this will lead to more phone calls and questions, and I think it's going to have the opposite effect of what we intend. The red line edits are way too small of a scope. This project required throwing it out and starting from scratch and hiring a graphic designer to begin the process, not nickel and diming line text edits within our current structure. If there's some constraint within our technology or billing system that means this is as much as we can do for now, great, let's talk about that. Let's see how to resolve that constraint. But I would be embarrassed to publish this bill and tell customers that this is an improvement, because it's, in my view, not just aesthetically, but I think operationally worse. So just to be real clear about that. Maybe my fellow commissioners disagree or have different opinions, but I'll give you guys a chance to respond.
If I may, so I agree with you, it's not ideal, but I disagree with you that it's not an improvement. I personally had to explain to customers, I live in Pasadena, I live in Glendale, but so I know a little bit about the bill. So I had to explain to them how the bill works as far as and kind of break it down for them. So I think this does it for customers, that people want to know what tier they're on or what rate that tier represents. So I disagree with you that doesn't do that. I think it does. But can it be better? Absolutely. For example, on solar customers, it can. Right now, the bill doesn't say, for example, how much power they cumulatively in a year they exported back to the utility, so they can plan for that. This bill doesn't do that. So there's a lot of room for improvement, but I think it's a step forward. Can it be better again? Yes, absolutely.
Maybe this was discussed before I came on board, so forgive me if I'm going backwards in any way, but I have an opinion, but it doesn't matter right now. At this moment, my question matters more, which is, what did we base this on? What sort of input did we get? Did we do focus groups either before we made changes or even after we've made changes to confirm that we're on the right track? That's what you would normally do in my professional experience when you get into this sort of project. So I imagine this was based on some sort of input that came from somewhere, but also kind of, since that input, have we confirmed that whether or not we're on the right track by testing it a little bit before you roll it out?
Yes, actually, the input was also from our customers and the team that is taking the calls currently. And most of the calls we do get are, how is each charge calculated? And that's why we decided to display it on the bill by rate, by category, and also the number of days usage. So if the customer calls in, it's easier to explain. Actually, I'm thinking if it's already displayed on the bill, they won't be calling in. But
Yeah, I mean, and you know, you can't, it's not always a one size fits all either, right? So
of course.
some customers just want simplicity, so the more you put on there, the more it confuses them. Other customers are more savvy, and so they want that level of detail. And this is obviously leaning toward the side of those customers that like more detail. But at the risk
yeah, we do
that you're
have
going to confuse more other people a lot more who don't have that savviness to understand what any of this really means, other than they see the bottom line and they only are interested in, like, that's the bill I got to pay.
If I may, Commissioners, President Fay, President Fay has been very passionate about this item. He has spoken many times, and I don't want to say anything has been taken lightly. We went to the front-end users, but bottom line, this is work in progress. Everything we discuss here, we're going to take it back. We're going to evaluate, if need be, reevaluate. But we did spoke to the front-end users, the customers. I understand we also spoke to other utilities.
We did.
So it's work in progress. We'll do our best, but it's not a one remedy, and this is not a final product in the sense of if we need to look at it again after we review it, after we do a test process, and we'll speak to our customers. If it's not working, we'll bring it back here and do a different format. So
I appreciate the open-minded attitude. I think that looking at the process, it sounds like this was a very internal process, from the customers who are already calling us to our staff who are dealing with this, talking to other utilities. That's a pretty small circle in the grand scheme of things. We have to remember that our customers have lives outside of their engagement with GWP. They spend such a small fraction of their time thinking about their water and electric bill. But they have lots of other bills they get from other companies, whether it's their cable company or their cell phone company. They get billing from Hulu and Netflix. Like, we need to look at the whole universe of how the best companies communicate their charges to their customers. And that's what we should aspire to. We don't want to be a little bit better than Anaheim or a little bit better than Pasadena. We want to do really well. And I think the first step, and I didn't hear anyone say this, but I think we need to hire a graphic designer that is not a utilities graphic designer, just a graphic designer. Somebody who doesn't have any preconceived notions of what a utility bill is supposed to look like, but can walk us through the process of what is information architecture. You know, why would we put something in a bigger font versus a smaller font? What do we want our customers' eyes to look at immediately? How do we serve customers, some of whom want the executive summary, some of whom want the details, right? I would be curious to know what are the constraints we're operating under. Is 4 pages the maximum we can send because it gets expensive? That's what our printers can handle. Do we only have the ability to print in blue, pink, and black? Or if we can do those colors, could we do any color? I mean, looking at the city seal, it looks like that's a full color thing. So I think there's a lot that just still needs to get worked on here.
And Chair Fay, with all due respect, and I appreciate all your. This is the forum that we come in and get direction, and we'll go back and look at it again. But as you have seen me speak in the past, I'm super proud of my staff. Customers is being one of them. They worked very hard on this project. Again, their input was directly from the end users, but I understand exploring others' avenues, looking at different organizations. And I know we have a big agenda, but I have to, with my due diligence, I have to share my personal experience. Not too long ago, I had to deal with a multi-billion-dollar company, and I think I won't mention the name, but the viewers and commission can read between the lines. Multi-billion-dollar company. And I went through their billings, and I had a landline issue. Yes, I do have a line at my home. I have senior folks that use online. And I have to tell you, I've used every technology, the chat, whatever you want to call it, and none of them gave me the answers I was looking for. Ended up messing things up, disconnecting the internet. 4 hours later, I had a technician at my house who was amazing and resolved the issue. So some of the commissioners have mentioned, we have to look at the diversity of our customers as well. You know, the 2 ladies mentioned, we have folks that they love the human touch. I've spoken to some of our customer service representatives. They have the same customer coming in for 10 years because they want to walk in, they want to get that personal touch from Harry. But everything that was brought forward today, we'll go back and look at it. Perhaps we'll do a trial. And if we're not getting the results that we want, we'll bring it back here and explore different avenues.
Yeah, say one thing. So when you look at the history of how things have been billed, you know, telecommunications is probably the easiest one if you look at how the phone company used to do the billing. As more and more tariffs got added and taxes got added and things got rolled up, bills became more elaborate. And when I'm talking bills, I'm talking paper. So as things evolved over time and people started to use the internet to pay for the bills, there are very quick ways for people to pay online and to see the lump sum, get in, get out, get done. And those are 2 different worlds, right? The intent of this bill is to provide additional information or clarity, right? So everyone looks at this, they can get all the information they need on it. If I am going online and I'm probably not getting a bill, I'm probably not even reading my bill. I'm probably just going to get the information I need actually online on my account. And I can dig into it as deep as I want there, and I can get as much information as I want there, but if I just want to pay my bill, I just say pay, right? If the intent is to have a bill look like the experience that we have online, that's a very different animal. So, and I appreciate the input. I think I've seen telecommunications companies, I've seen DirecTV, television companies. I've seen those people that you pay utilities for on a regular basis. They've gone through this same kind of malaise, right? How do I deal with a customer who wants everything and nothing at the same time? And the push is more towards get them online, because then they can get anything they want, right? But I think in our community, for whatever it's worth, they're very interested in paper and they're very interested in people. I would love to move them more towards the online because they can do whatever they want there. I want to make sure everyone hears me on the TV. You can get whatever you want online, right?
With some complications, but
You know, with some complications, right? But we're moving in that direction, right?
Mhm.
The intent here being that there were several issues that came from the bills. One was a lack of clarity. People often made assumptions about the utility bill that were in part of the sewer, or in part of, some other element was always part of the utility, right? And I think this does go a long way towards kind of breaking things out a little bit, explaining them a little better, and helping people understand that not all rates on these bills are utility rates, right? Not that we can't do better. Completely agree. But I think the approach that we need to have, if our intent is to have a paper bill that reflects an online presence, we have something very different to think about. I'll give you that.
No, I think that's a good thought. And as we look at the whole customer journey and all the different customers we have, let's think about how does this bill work in concert with the website we're trying to drive people towards, right?
Right.
How does it work in concert with the O-Power insert that you get periodically that frankly is beautiful and is very easy for me to understand how I'm using my power, why my bill's higher or lower, right? If we could make this a little bit more like O-Power, I think that would be moving in the right direction. I understand what you're saying, that is a headline summary and these are the details, right?
Right.
But I think there's room for both. I haven't heard anyone address the question about what constraints we're under. Is this a 30-year-old billing system that we're stuck using because it costs too much to replace? Are we limited by the print shop? Like, what is the universe we're operating in?
Sure. I don't know that we have any physical limits. There are dollars associated with printing. There are dollars associated with paper consumed, right? Obviously, the fewer bills we issue, if we go auto bill or auto pay, or if it's paperless, that obviously costs the utility less, which in turn costs customers less. So the more effort we put into this, yes, there are costs associated with it. I don't think that there's a physical limitation. I just think there's a cost.
Okay. And similarly, the design and layout, we didn't really change that at all in this revision. Is that something that we could change if we decided that was what we wanted to do?
Are you discussing whether or not we stay 8.5 by 11, or are you?
Oh, just the use of all the text being in the same font, using only these two colors, having these boxes, using acronyms that are not commonly understood by our customers, like RSFS and WSF 75. I mean, are those things that the database we use automatically exports and we can't control, or are these all choices we can make,
President Fay, I don't have the details to that information. We can certainly go back and look at it.
Yeah, and if maybe this isn't the right forum to get into the nuts and bolts, I would be more than happy to come in and talk through this in more detail on a working session and kind of get a whiteboard about what's possible. You're right, I do care a lot about this. The reason is, this is, whether it's our city or LADWP or any city, your interaction with all of government is most commonly when you get a parking ticket or when you get your electric bill. We're representing how people think about all of government and whether it works or whether it's totally useless, whether it's good value. And so it's a lot of burden. Like, we're carrying a lot. And yes, we carry functionally the billing responsibility for these other departments, and that adds confusion. But this is the front door to people's experience with their government, which I think is a pretty heavy responsibility. So I think we need to try to do really well here and make sure that it's clear and it is attractive and modern. One thing we talked about earlier with respect to phone calls is handling different languages. If I don't speak English and I get this bill, I mean, it's pretty confusing when you do speak English. So do we know? Could we print this in Russian? Could we print it in Armenian? Could we send it to people in their preferred language? I mean, I think these are good questions we need to think through a little bit.
President Fay, again, your points are well taken. In addition of being the president, you're also a Glendale resident. So your opinion matters. You're more than welcome to be that one other individual would want to hear from you, your perspective, your ideas. And like I said, this is work in progress. We'll take it back. We'll monitor it. We'll do a trial. And if it's working, great. If there are improvements we need to make, there was some suggestion here. And next time we're here, we'll bring a different vision if we have to. So
Thank you, I appreciate that.
we appreciate you.
Any other comments or questions on this item?
Yes. Actually, generally I agree with President Fay, because I myself am electrical engineer, and sometimes my family member, they ask, how this bill is constructed, what does terms mean? How is there a formula? So I don't have very good answer. So it should be, first of all, it should be very clear. I'm not saying you're doing wrong things, but it should be clear. Presentation should be a kind of understandable, or even in different languages. Then some of the factors are very ambiguous. So actually, earlier I have been talking about, how you estimate how much power you would need in next year to buy from, for example, Los Angeles. So this estimation has got a formula. So this formula is getting better and better and better. Actually, I gave to one of you 6 articles from IEEE that scientists formulated new ways to calculate, new algorithms to how to estimate. I mean, you can't say, okay, we need 100 units. Let's say that we are going to buy 200 to be sure. So this 100, is it going to be 100? And can you guess it is 150? Or can you guess as close as possible to reality? For example, 110 or 120. I'm just giving some number. So actually, there are some algorithms. But the answer was, we can change that. This is up to Los Angeles to investigate that and change that. We can change it. But anyway, I have shown, how scientists have done this estimation process. So this is one of the things that I'm saying. So this makes for example, electricity much expensive than expected, So you are buying something, of course, one may say this is insurance. But I mean, insurance, if you're paying, because whatever you're using, for example, you're guessing 200, you're using 80, that 120 that you have paid, you can't use it next year. You see what I'm saying? So this is one of the examples. So the other is that I have noticed the way it is calculated, the power. So in 1 month, the worst case is based for whole year. I mean, I'm giving one exact example. So this Armenian Society of Los Angeles got a building. So during COVID, nobody was there. In 1 day...
Commissioner Alvarez, not to cut you off, I'm not sure if our legal team wants to comment. I think we're drifting away from the main topic, and I think we're mentioning specific institutions. I completely understand. I think you have some valid points, but I think what you're bringing up may be different than the topic of conversation. I just want to make sure we're...
Thank you, Mr. Nersersen. The comments can be noted. However, if there's going to be a broad discussion on the item, it should be agendized for a future agenda if the commissioners all concur. So I would, comments are welcome. However, a debate or a full discussion, first, I don't want to speak on behalf of staff, but I don't think they're prepared to, with information to discuss this item. And also for the Brown Act purposes, I would recommend that it get agendized for a future meeting.
So let's close out our discussion and comments on the bill, and then we'll move on to the next time water quality report. Is there anything else on the bill that you specifically wanted to mention?
Yeah, I mean, later on, you have to answer to that question. I agree that in this session, maybe we can't go that detail. But there's a factor there in bill that it is very annoying, So in 2 days that we had welding and these sort of things, it was a kind of counted for a whole, year. And we are in debt now. Everything was based on that a couple of days. So anyway, I'm expecting that in future, please investigate and give some answers to us.
So, Commissioner Vanessian, I believe I understand what you're asking. I believe it's about demand charge. Yeah. So we can discuss demand charge and how it's implemented through the billing process. We can pick that for another time, and we can sit down and go through it with the commission. No problem.
And just since we've got this up on the screen, I guess a demand charge only applies to certain commercial customers. Generally, it's not on the residential bill. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's only for big commercial accounts.
Are there other changes to commercial account bills that are not represented in this example? Or again, as we're looking at the full scope of our customers, I know we hear a lot more from our residential customers because they're novices. This is normal day-to-day life. But let's make sure we're thinking about.
Of course, so for the commercial accounts, the electric service categories, they have the demand charge and the reactive power charge. So those are, again, the charge is specified for what the rate is and how much we're billing for the KWH.
Okay. So to be clear, this bill is an example of a residential. And this is an L1A class, right? That's kind of what it says here. If it's commercial or small, medium, or large business, they'll have very specific rate classes that are identified here. And under each rate class, they'll have additional qualifiers in that section for electric, which would include reactive power.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, great.
And or TOU rates or anything like that.
Yeah.
But President Fay, I understand your point. We'll definitely look at that bill as well. If there's improvements needed or if we see something we can make it better, we'll definitely look at it.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay. I think that's it for the bill, so we can move on to the water quality report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Martin Manucharian, and today I'll be presenting the Consumer Confidence Report Rule and the report we recently published in compliance with this rule. Each year, water purveyors are required to produce and publish a report containing the previous year's sampling results. This is how we let our customers know about the work that we do to comply with the regulations that govern water quality and how we ensure the safety of the water that they use every day. We call this report colloquially the Annual Water Quality Report. This is the name that we use on our website as well as the printed version of the document. Officially, the report is called the Consumer Confidence Report, and you may hear me call it the CCR during this presentation. The CCR was established by the United States Environmental Protection Agency as part of the Safe Drinking Water Act and is administered to us by the California State Water Resources Control Board's Division of Drinking Water via the Health and Safety Code and Title 22 of the California Code of Regulations. The report is composed of a number of required elements, such as the ones that you see on the screen. I will provide more details regarding these elements in the following slides. We're also given the opportunity to present some optional educational information, which I'll also discuss in other slides. The first element that we're required to provide to our customers is information about our water system. This includes a utility contact in case customers want to reach out to us with questions or concerns, participation opportunities, and information for non-English speaking populations. Customers can reach me at the number on the screen, and they can participate regarding GWP-related topics at these commission meetings on the first Monday of each month at 4 p.m. The information for non-English speaking populations is available in a variety of languages and serves to emphasize the importance of this document and offers assistance to those who need it. The next piece of information that we provide is the various sources of our water. To convey this information, we include the graphic that you see on the screen, which provides a visual breakdown of our available water supply in 2024, as well as some interesting information about our system as a whole. The next component of the CCR is the explanation of some of the technical terms and abbreviations that we use throughout the report. We're required to use specific wording for the definitions on the screen, but we also have an entire list of abbreviations elsewhere in the report to explain some of the other terms that customers will encounter throughout the document. The next component of the CCR is the listing of the levels of detected contaminants in our drinking water. This information is the primary purpose of the report. As I previously mentioned, we are required by state and federal regulations to test our water for a large variety of possible contaminants. Only those contaminants with detected results are listed in these tables. The most important fact for customers to take away from this information is that in 2024, our water continued to meet and exceed all state and federal regulatory standards, and that it continues to remain safe and aesthetically pleasing. That being said, I would like to note that we did recently discover that one of the data points we included in this year's report is missing a decimal point. More specifically, the result for barium at MWD's Weymouth treatment plant should read 0.124 instead of 124. This, as I mentioned, this is a recent discovery, but it has already been corrected on our website. In addition to the lists of detected contaminants, we are required to provide some specific language regarding nitrate and lead. We include an informational statement regarding nitrate because some of our groundwater wells do contain elevated levels of nitrate. However, since this water is blended with water from Metropolitan Water District, which does not have nitrate, the actual levels of nitrate in the water that we serve to our customers are significantly below the maximum contaminant level. With regards to lead, the language that we include in the report is standard for all water purveyors, regardless of the actual content of the contaminant in their water. There is additional language that must be included by utilities that have lead in their water, but thankfully Glendale is not one of those utilities. As part of the CCR, we are also required to include violations of regulations or aspects of regulations that are not explicitly covered in the report. And I'm happy to say that we did not have any such violations in 2024. Finally, we provide some required information for people with compromised immune systems. And we take advantage of the option to include non-required material with sections regarding our cross-connection control program, our recycled water program, answers to a variety of frequently asked questions, and we provide resources regarding water conservation. The CCR must be made available to customers by July 1st of each year. The report containing test results from 2024 was made available on our website in late June and recently updated today. And we also offer a printed version of the report to customers who request hard copies using the contact information on the screen. And I'll leave this information on the screen and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, sir, for the presentation. Any questions from commissioners?
Thanks, Martin. Quick question. Do we have, if I remember correctly, in Glendale, we don't have a test lab, in-house test lab, correct?
We don't have a laboratory, no. We do some testing using handheld devices, but the majority of our samples go out to a third-party laboratory.
Do we have any issues with turnaround times with the test labs?
We have not had any issues with turnaround
Okay.
times.
And how often do we take a sample and test it from different locations?
We collect samples pretty much every day that we're here. There are different kinds of samples from a variety of locations. We collect samples from our distribution system, our tanks and reservoirs, our sources, and it's a number of samples collected from any of those sources on any given day.
All right, thank you.
Are there any big changes or surprises from this report last year? This is something we publish every year, right?
This is something we publish every year. No big surprises. I think it's always good to be able to report that we didn't have any exceedances, we didn't have any issues with our water supply. So,
Great. No surprises is good news.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Boring is good.
thank you.
All right, well, good evening, commissioners, President Fay, members of the commission. I'm Chizma Bigolu, Assistant General Manager of Water, and today I will be providing an update on the Water Master Plan condition. If you recall, in last month's meeting, I provided a similar presentation. However, this was on the methodology that we were using to prioritize and to score these projects. And so today's presentation will get into the initial results from that evaluation, as well as again, how we're prioritizing some of these projects. And so we have over 90 facilities between our potable and our recycled water systems. Right? So these includes our tanks and reservoirs, our pump stations, our well systems. At each facility, we have various asset classes. They can be broken down into 4 distinct classes. That's structural, electrical, mechanical, and what we call I&C, or instrumentation and controls. Within each of these classes, we have the actual assets of the individual components that we evaluated. Again, we did evaluate or assess about 948 of these assets for the efforts of the master plan. And so this is a composition of the various assets that were evaluated. As you can see, there's a wide variety of these assets. A couple things to note here. Close to 30% of the assessments was comprised of piping and valves. Right? Piping and valves are prevalent throughout our facilities and our infrastructures. Each pump station has a suction and a discharge valve and piping. Each tank has an inlet and an outlet. So this is something that is prevalent throughout our distribution system, specifically our facilities. And so that is shown in the burnt orange segment of the pie there. We also had about another 24% dedicated to buildings and grounds. So these are the roads leading up to our reservoirs. These are the roofing system of our pump stations, concrete pedestals, for our pumps, things of that nature, and so on and so forth. We had about 15%, which is shown in the yellow, which is allocated strictly for pumps and motors. And just to reiterate, you saw this last month, this is the scoring criteria that was applied. And so physical assessment scores of 1 to 3 means they're in fairly good condition, right? We don't pay too much attention to these. They were recently rehabbed, and so we don't really prioritize this within a 5-year CIP. However, asset scores of about 4 to 5, we do prioritize these. It means that they are typically at the end of their useful life, and somewhat unserviceable, meaning we're not able to get spare parts due to obsolescence, or we just don't have the technical expertise to work on these due to antiquated technology. And so we really want to try to prioritize this along with some of our fire improvement projects, and we'll talk about some of those later on in the presentation. And so this pie chart represents the assessment results. Worth noting is that 60% of our assets, that's represented by the red and the orange segment there. About 60% of our assets scored about a 4 or a 5. Again, this means that they are in dire need of repair or replacement. And so we will focus on these assets. And so we use these results to really build and develop our CIP. Again, I know we have a lot of acronyms and jargons in water. Last time I was up here, CIP meant cast iron pipe. Today it means capital improvement program, right? And so this is really a way for us to systematically and proactively rehabilitate our water system through the implementation of various projects. And also from a budgetary standpoint, this helps us make funding decisions and how to allocate funding. So this is a CIP cost breakdown over the course of the next 20 years, which is the planning horizon for our master plan. And in aggregate, that would be about $700 million over 20 years. I call this a draft cost breakdown because we are still in the process of prioritizing and scoring some of those projects, which will likely inform this figure. It will not likely go down, but that is sort of the ballpark of what we're expecting to spend. Again, you can see that majority of that cost is for pipeline replacement, about 56%. This is typical of water agencies. Pipeline replacement occupies a significant component of CIPs, specifically for Glendale, in which we're looking to replace about 3 to 5 miles of pipeline every single year. Other components include facilities. Again, this is primarily our pump systems. We have a number of issues with our pump systems, tanks and reservoirs. We also have about 11% allocated for fire improvements, and we'll talk about those specific projects later on in the presentation. And then about another 7% or so for new supply projects. This is our recycled water projects. And so with that, we'll actually go in and talk about some of those projects. I won't spend too much time on this graphic. You're familiar with this graphic. Other than to say that by 2045, we're looking to introduce a new water source for Glendale. That is potable reuse. That is what is shown in the magenta color there. Again, this is water that we can count on. This is a sustainable source of water. This is an environmentally conscious a source of water, and will likely be the most economical source of water within the next 10 years. And so with that, I want to touch on the different types of recycled water that we're either looking to expand on or build. Firstly, we have what we call non-potable reuse, or NPR. Okay, so this is advanced treated wastewater that is solely used for irrigation. So it's treated to a level just below potable water, and we use it to irrigate our green spaces. So our golf courses, our schools, our fields. And currently, this accounts for about 5% of our water supply. Next, we have indirect potable reuse, or IPR. Again, this is purified water. It goes through an additional purification process, and if you were on a tour with us last month, you've probably memorized this process by now, right? That is ultrafiltration is step 1. Step 2 is reverse osmosis, and then step 3 is ultraviolet or advanced oxidation. And so once it goes through that purification process, we then inject it into the groundwater basin or open source reservoir, where it acts as a sort of a natural filtration system or an environmental buffer for about 4 to 6 months before we can introduce that water back into our distribution system. Direct potable reuse is the same purification process. However, we can bypass the buffer and introduce that water into our distribution system. And this is really conducive for water agencies that don't have access to groundwater basins or open source reservoirs. And so this outlines the steps that we're taking to evaluate these water supply projects. Step 1 is to identify all projects, types, and scopes. Again, we left no stone unturned here. We're looking at all types of projects. We're looking at groundwater projects. We're looking at the potential of expanding our recycled water plant. We're looking at potential partnerships with other agencies. We're looking at stormwater capture projects. We're also looking at seawater desalination projects. And then step 2 is to really refine the projects based on a set of qualitative criteria. And then we've completed both of those steps. Later this month, we will further evaluate and select projects to proceed with. And so this table enumerates the qualitative criteria that was used to score these supply projects. And that is what is shown in the far left column there. Number one is water self-sufficiency and regulatory requirements. These carry the most weight at 25%, right? So this represents our ability to increase local dependency while continuing to ensure water quality. Secondly, we have to remain sensitive to the potential cost impacts to our customers. And so that's why cost efficiency was weighted at 20%, right? We want to make sure that with each project that we implement, we get the maximum value for our money. And then lastly, we have integrated schedule as well as ease of integration at 15% each, right? So this is how soon can we implement these projects? And do we have existing infrastructure that we can use, or do we have to start from scratch? And so this sort of gives you a flavor of the portfolio of projects that were evaluated. And so we looked at a total of about 30 projects. After step 2, which is the screening process, we refined that down to about 11 projects, right? So we eliminated stormwater capture projects, really just due to the limitations we have with our groundwater basin. It's an unhealthy basin. It's a leaky basin, meaning it's not able to store and hold water adequately. But also it's a contaminated basin. We also eliminated seawater desalination just due to the lack of proximity to the ocean. It will be very destructive and cost intensive to try to build a backbone pipeline from Glendale to the Pacific Ocean. And also, we did eliminate decentralized treatment. This is essentially building a brand new wastewater facility to collect all of our wastewater, which seems non-feasible for Glendale, given that we already have a recycled water plant that we can very easily expand on. And so actually, Commissioners and President Fay, I'm happy to stop here for questions before I go into the next segment of my presentation, or we can continue however you prefer.
Any questions so far?
Thanks, Chisholm. If you go back to slide number 8, please. So $700 million for CIP over 20 years.
Yes,
That's approximately like $35 million a year.
approximately, yes.
How does that compare to our existing budget?
Well,
Which is in the next 5 years.
Right. So I don't have the exact figures in front of me, Commissioner, but I can assure you currently we're not doing anywhere close to even $10 million. And a lot of that is because we were waiting until the completion of this master plan to understand what we really need from a holistic perspective.
Okay. So basically, it's going to be like a threefold increase,
Absolutely.
approximately.
That is a plan.
And does this include any system expansions or just 700 million over 20 years to just keep the system up?
Well, yes, a great question. That does include the new supplies and any potential expansions of the system.
Okay. Yeah, that's all of my questions. Thank you.
I think that answered my question of how did we get to the point where 60% of our infrastructure is in need of dire replacement, but it sounds like we've been underinvesting for quite some time.
Deferred maintenance. Okay.
And if I may, I'm assuming that's going to have an impact on the water rates, correct? Or has that been accounted for already?
Yeah, so, and that will be in my next presentation. So subsequent to this, we will also undertake a COSA, or cost of service analysis, which essentially is a plan to develop a funding mechanism for these projects moving forward. And from that plan, we will present several options, and we will also bring that back to your commission, but also gauge the council's appetite to undertake some of those rates. Okay.
Would you please give some explanation for how you handle the surface water? And my next question is, how you measure reliability of the system?
Right. So by surface water, you mean rainwater? Or,
Yeah.
Right. So currently, we have rights in the Verdugo Basin. And so any water that's captured and percolates down to the Verdugo Basin, it's our water. That is the basin that is deemed, I said, was unhealthy. So it is a contaminated basin, Commissioner, but also it is a leaky basin. So what that means is just to the south of the Verdugo Basin is the Raymond Basin. So any water that's captured and percolates down to the Verdugo Basin, it makes its way down to the Raymond Basin. We also operate out of the San Fernando groundwater basin, It's a large groundwater aquifer. However, we do not have actual rights. That's water rights to that basin. So our rights is only for the Vertigo Basin. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
And then you had a second question.
When you surface water, I mean, I think that you treat a little bit and then you kind of, it goes back to the ocean, yeah?
Well, so we have surface water. We capture what we can in the Vertigo Basin, and yes, we do treat that water. We have Glendale Water Treatment Plant. But what is not captured does make its way down to the LA River and make its way down to Long Beach into the Pacific Ocean.
What about the reliability of your
How do we measure reliability?
reliability?
Reliability? Right. And so reliability is basically measured by how many outages we get per year, water breaks, things of that nature. Currently, we average about 14 main breaks per year. And so, that's where a pipe breaks for whatever reason. It could be the aging infrastructure. But we have a downtime in which we actually have to go in and repair that pipe. So that's one of the key ways that we measure reliability.
Do you have inventory for short-term items? If for example, the pump or motor goes bad, do you have a measure? What is long time inventory? I mean, you have time to buy.
Right.
But there are some items you don't have time to buy. So do you have inventory for those items?
Right, and that's actually a great question, and that is a challenge for us. I think a lot of our pump systems, a lot of electrical panels, PLCs, a lot of this was installed in 50s and 60s, and so they honestly just don't make those spare parts anymore. And so even if we were to try to get spare parts, we don't know where to find them, and we don't have the expertise to work on those spare parts. And so what we have to do, and what this plan is going to call for, is to do a comprehensive replacement of some of those parts that we don't have in inventory. Now, if it's for a common item, a common asset like a valve, a flow meter, those are things that we do keep in stock, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. And so the next segment of this presentation was at the request of your commission regarding fire protection and how we're integrating that into our master planning efforts. And so as you may be aware, the state updated their fire hazard severity zone map earlier this year in March. And so for us, the first order of business was to meet with our friends in the fire department to ensure that the code that we're using, which is the 2022 California Fire Code, is still applicable, all right? And it is, indeed, but also we wanted to ensure that some of the assumptions that we're making and the criteria that we're using is aligned with sort of what they would be practicing out in the field as well. And so with that being said, the California Fire Code stipulates a number of operational guidelines that water systems need to maintain in order to ensure adequate fire flow. And so these are guidelines around system pressure, system velocity, system storage, but primarily fire flow. Fire flow requirements is what you're seeing here on this map. And this is the fire flow requirement for the various segments of our service area. And this is based on population density. And so the high-density residential areas, such as South Glendale, which is represented by green here on this map, we have to be able to maintain a fire flow. And just to clarify, these are flows out of our fire hydrants. And so we have to be able to maintain a flow of about 2,500 gallons per minute for a duration of 3 hours. Okay, so for the low-density residential areas, sort of as you move north towards the foothills, and that's represented by the pink, that flow reduces to about 1,000 gallons per minute, and the duration reduces to 2 hours, right? And so as we get up into the open spaces and the parks, sort of by the San Gabriel Mountains and the Vertigo Mountains, again, that requirement is 1,000 GPM, but for this time, it's only an hour duration, okay? And so that's what is shown by the blue. But again, these are sort of the criteria that we follow as far as fire flow requirements. And so the map on the far left shows our current deficiencies in providing the required fire flow. And I want to make sure I clarify and sort of preface my comments by saying it is not uncommon for water systems that predate the establishment of fire codes to have these deficiencies. Generally speaking, what water systems do is, as part of their regular integration of capital projects, they update their fire infrastructure. However, what we're doing here in Glendale is recognizing this and we're actually tackling it head on, meaning we're actually implementing and front-loading specific projects to be able to remediate some of these deficiencies. Secondly, when a hydrant is deemed as deficient, does not mean that it's completely useless in fighting fire. Generally speaking, what firefighters would do is they would use multiple hydrants to be able to either augment the pressure or augment the flow. So I wanted to also put that out there. And being that our system has been in place since the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and the first fire code was established in the 70s, that is why we have some deficiencies within our fire hydrants. But with that being said, the map on the left shows our current deficiencies in providing the required fire flow. Now, as we start to expire some of our small diameter pipes, so that's the 2s, the 4s, and the 6-inch pipes, those deficiencies will reduce to about 248, and that is what is shown by the map in the middle. So these deficiencies will further be reduced to 185 by what is known as hydrant splitting, and again, this was based off of conversations we had with our fire department. Basically, a hydrant split is when you have adjacent hydrants within 300 feet radius of each other, where one hydrant far exceeds the fire flow requirement and one does not. However, together, they average out at a number or a figure that is above that fire flow requirement. And again, this is in alignment with how they would actually fight fire in the field. If they hook up their hose to a hydrant and they're not getting enough pressure, they would simply go down the road to the next hydrant over, hook up another set of hose to that hydrant to augment the pressure. Oftentimes, they also would carry water tankers in their truck to be able to augment the flow as necessary. Again, I want to emphasize that as far as Glendale Water and Power is concerned, we still want to be able to maintain the required fire flow for these hydrants. And so we are going to implement and, again, front load these 28 fire improvement projects. We have 24 specific pipes, or I should say projects, that we're going to upsize independent of our regular CIP pipe replacement projects. We will also be installing a slip line, and this is for a critical pipeline. It's a 16-inch pipeline that goes underneath State Highway 2. This pipeline has a high likelihood of failure, and it's also a high consequence of failure, being that it goes under a state highway. And so this is also a critical pipeline to not only our fire, but just our overall system. And so we will be using a process or a method called slip lining to be able to harden this pipeline, which is a less intrusive process than open trench or even boring. We will also be installing a fire flow pump as well as a pressure reducing valve. And the pressure reducing valve will simply connect two pressure zones. And so, when you have low pressure from one zone, that valve will easily open and you can augment the pressure and the flow from the upper zone. And so those pressure zones will work in tandem of each other with the connection of that pressure reducing valve. Also, as part of this, we will be installing 3 permanent generators, okay? And so just to be clear, the permanent generators is not really a direct response to the fire flow improvements, although it will indirectly impact our fire flow. This is more of a separate endeavor to ensure reliability, right? So the 3 zones that are mentioned here, Chevy Chase 1666, St. Louis Ray, and Allen Tank, they have minimal storage. And so if anything were to happen in which we lost power for an extended period of time, it will cause significant disruptions, which is why we are going ahead and adding permanent generators at this site. And so that concludes my presentation. I didn't have a slide on schedule, but I wanted to talk through that really quickly. And so we anticipate that by the end of this month, we will have completed the infrastructure assessment as well as the supply planning, again, which we will keep your commission apprised. We will also be providing an update to council. And then subsequent to that, early next year, early January, we will start the cost of service analysis. And that will be about a 6 to 7 month process. And so we look to complete that by sort of the July, September timeframe. And we will be looking to implement the new rates by fall of 2026. Okay, so that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, want to go first?
You mentioned schedule, but it's still not clear to me. When are we going to get all these 28 projects done? What's your goal?
Oh, so that will be, we don't have a definitive schedule for when we would have completed that. That will also be integrated as part of our regular capital projects. But the idea is to prioritize those within our first 5 years of our projects. If for whatever reason that goes beyond that 5 year, because the idea is to have a master plan every 5 years, those fire flow projects will always be prioritized within the first couple of years of that master planning process.
Are there any of those projects that, 28 is a lot, that you've prioritized as higher risk that have to get done sooner?
Yes.
As soon as possible?
Yes. So it's based on consequential failure, meaning the ones that service, schools, hospitals, high density population areas. We tend to prioritize those. We tend to prioritize human life and safety, and so those are in the high density populated areas will be prioritized.
And so you've obviously come up with this 28 based on the conditions of the infrastructure. Have you also prioritized them based on, just to make sure I'm hearing it right, based on the risks on the fire side, should there be failures on
Yes,
the water
absolutely.
side?
Yes, absolutely. So it's not just based on the condition of the infrastructure, although that is a key criteria, but this is based on an in-depth hydraulic analysis, right? So it's you can have a hydrant that's in great condition or a pipeline that's in great condition, but if it's not meeting that regulatory requirement, it would be prioritized for fire flow improvements.
Thank you.
What are the material of the new pipes?
Ductile iron pipe. Ductile iron pipe.
So it is going to get corroded?
So ductile iron does not get corroded, no. So what we'll do is we're actually starting the process of wrapping it with sort of a corrosion-resistant bags. It's a polyurethane wrap that we will wrap it with. That is something that we're also going to include in our specifications moving forward to abate corrosion.
Oh, so you have sacrificial anodes?
Well, it's not sacrificial anodes. Our pipelines are not designed. Those are for bigger, large diameter pipelines. This is more so for smaller diameter pipelines. So basically anything 10 inches and below. But also, Commissioner, we, in testing our soils, corrosion is not really an issue that we deal with in our service area, just being that our soils are not, they're not as abrasive, they're not as corrosive as other areas. Nevertheless, we do still take the precaution of protecting our pipelines from corrosion. And again, we wrap it with polyurethane wrap, which is a corrosion abatement material.
What about the internal corrosion of big tanks if it's like iron based?
Right, so we do also coat the internal of our tanks. In fact, some of the facilities projects, part of that is recoating the internal of our tanks to be able to ensure that we abate that corrosion as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chisholm, one thing it's not clear to me, when I look at slide 17 and 18 together, the fire hazard severity map compared to the fire flow requirements, like if you look at the red area, that's the low density area. Yeah. Now, I can't help but think about the fires, the January fires. It didn't happen in high density areas. It happened in low density area and basically devastated those Palisades and Altadena, Pasadena area.
Right.
So why is it that the fire flow requirement is low in the fire hazard severity, the red area in the fire hazard severity zone?
And that's a great question.
That's kind of counterintuitive for me.
It is, and it's interestingly enough, I was talking to our GM about that very same conundrum. And so my response to that and my sense to that, Commissioner, is that as far as the fire code is concerned, their main priority is the protecting of life and safety. And so, if you have fire in the Verdugo Mountains, where it's less populated, they're basically saying, hey, listen, we don't really have as many people living here, but for the high density areas, we want to prioritize those. That would be more catastrophic. The loss of life associated with that fire would be more catastrophic than the loss of land, if you will. Again, not to say that would not be bad, but that's sort of my only assumption in that.
Well, one thing I can say is the fire can start in the Verdugo Mountains, and if you have 100-mile-hour winds, they can quickly come down in the more populated areas. So I'm not saying it's
Right.
you didn't come up with the code, so
Of course.
that was just an observation. And the other one about the generators, I know you were talking about we're planning to install 3 generators
Right.
for those 3 sites. Do we have mobile generators that we can dispatch in case of need?
Yes, we do. We have a number of mobile generators, portable generators, and each of our pump stations, a number of our pump stations, they have what is known as switch gears. That's the ability to connect those, connect those generators. But again, the reason why we're identifying these 3 sites is because they are a critical site to our operations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had the same question about the flow requirements. It seemed a little bit inverse, but those are not our codes to make. So, who's responsible for testing and maintaining the fire hydrants themselves here
The
in
water
Glendale?
department, we are.
We are.
Our team handles that, yes.
Can you describe a little bit about how that works? Like, what do we do day to day? What happens if we find a problem? What's the interaction with the fire department? And I ask because I know there was some finger pointing following the Palisades fire about, some of the fire hydrants in Palisades were old or had been tested, hadn't been replaced, that kind of thing. So how do we do that here in Glendale?
Well, generally speaking, there's a number of ways to do it. We test, each hydrant has a fire line that's connected to a valve, and then it comes up to the 6-inch outlet associated with the hydrant. And so, number one, we have to make sure that the valve is operable, right? So we do a number of turns or what we call valve exercising to ensure that that is operable. If we need to, we can operate or isolate that hydrant. That's number one. But
So
also,
that's a GWP crew drives out to the hydrant, opens it up, and sprays water into the street?
that is correct.
Okay.
And that's essentially how we test the hydrants. You just said it. We want to make sure that if we can operate that valve in the event of a fire, in this case, the fire department, they can operate that valve, they can open the hydrant, they can hook their hose up to the hydrant, and they can get the necessary flow. Now, we also do have what is called fire flow tests. And so whenever we have a new developer or whenever we have a new construction work, again, we want to make sure that all new developments meet that fire code. And so there's 2 ways. We have a hydraulic model that we can simulate the flow, or we can physically go out there and test it in the hydrant to make sure that, number one, we're meeting the flow, but also we're meeting it for the duration of time that's prescribed for that hydrant.
And if there is a deficiency that we find during this inspection process, how does that get rectified? And does the fire department get notified, or we just fix it internally and they assume that all the hydrants work all the time? How does that process work?
So, we partner with the fire department. That collaborative effort is very important. And so it depends. If it's a new development, there shouldn't be any deficiencies, right? Because they have to be up to code. But if it's, let's just say the valve is inoperable, we do have to coordinate to go and replace the valve. That's something that we would do internally. If for whatever reason we're not meeting the flow, that's something that we would prioritize and schedule as part of either an upcoming project or we can add it to an existing project to be able to make sure that we can upsize a pipe or do whatever we need to do based on the hydraulic model to meet the required flows.
And is there ever a time when a hydrant's offline because it's been identified as problematic but hasn't been fixed yet? Like, do we monitor the backlog or turnaround times for those things?
Yeah, so not to my knowledge, whenever a hydrant is in the process of being replaced, we're very, very cautious about, number one, letting the fire department know that this is currently being replaced and giving them a very specific schedule So in the event, God forbid, that there's a fire, they have a plan. They have a workaround plan. Either there's another hydrant within a 300 feet, and 300 feet is sort of the radius. All of our lines, there has to be a hydrant within a 300 feet radius of each other. And so if for whatever reason we need to work or replace a hydrant, and that work will be done over an extended period of time, we will let our friends in the fire department know so that they can work around it.
Gotcha. Okay, great. And the figures that you showed around where we have deficiencies in the current fire flow levels compared to the code, how much of that is dependent on the status of our reservoirs being full or at least half full, or is it independent of how much water is in the? I understand those are important in balancing pressure throughout the systems.
Right. Well, that is the storage is independent of the fire flow. Generally speaking, for fire flow, you're talking about system pressure. You're talking about velocity, which impacts pressure, right? Velocity and pressure that have an inverse relationship. But we have more than enough storage throughout our distribution system. So storage is not really an issue. It's just the limitation is the pipe diameter, right? So we're not able to push as much water as we want just due to the small pipe diameters.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of the specific example that's on people's minds from the Palisades fire, where there was a particular reservoir in the Palisades Highlands that was offline for an extended period, and I don't know the hydraulics of it, but it looked bad that was offline and the fire hydrants weren't working. Do we have situations like that we might get stuck with, or is our system set up in a different way where things are more interconnected so that there's fewer single point failures?
Yes, loaded question, a lot of questions there. I will say that, number one, to my sense, none of our hydrants are inoperable. At all times, our hydrants are always working. And if for whatever reason our hydrants are not working, again, we will all be notified and we will have a plan. Secondly, it really is a balancing act to try to balance water quality and storage, right? And so the more storage you have in your reservoirs, the less retention time, the less turnover, and so that water becomes stagnant. So it's important that we sort of manage that storage so that we can agitate that water and keep that water flowing, right? So with that being said, we do have some hydrants that are out of service, and so just due to structural defects, and we are working to get those repaired as soon as possible and bring them back on service. But we have significant redundancies in our system to where if we need to, we can feed a certain pressure zone or a certain set of hydrants from other reservoirs or tanks as needed. And so, President Fay, I don't anticipate that that will be an issue for us as far as getting water or getting access to a certain pressure zone or set of hydrants.
Okay. As you're going through this process and looking at all the different assets throughout the network, could you just give an extra glance at kind of the edge cases or the kind of the ends of the network topology? And you think about the Palisades Highland equivalent where, maybe it's at the end of Chevy Chase Canyon, maybe it's on Adams Hill, wherever it is, but there are parts of the city that are not as well connected as other parts. And it would be a shame to find out after the fact that, oh, well, that hydrant, it only works if there's pressure in that reservoir, that kind of thing. So if you're telling me everything's belt and suspenders, then I'll take your word for it. But I think it would be good just to make sure that we check on that.
Absolutely.
The other thing I want to bring to your attention, I don't know how this would manifest it for the department, but another consequence of the new fire maps that the state published is that they supersede the city's pre-existing fire hazard maps for lots of purposes, but also for homeowners insurance. I don't think there's been enough time for people to have their annual insurance cycles come all the way around yet, but I think there will be a bloodbath of people getting really, really expensive renewals or non-renewals, and they're punted onto the FAIR plan. And to the extent that our firefighting infrastructure has an impact on the perceived risk to insurers, that could have a big impact on people in Glendale's ability to get homeowners insurance or have to get fire insurance or afford to stay in their homes if they're elderly on a fixed income, whatever it may be. So I think we should try to think about that and figure out what role we have to play in, if any, in that. Perhaps we can reassure the insurance community that, yeah, hey, all the fire hydrants in Glendale work really well. So even though you're in a hazard zone, it's not that big a deal, whatever it is. But I could see that being kind of an indirect consequence. And if we can help reassure people or reassure the insurance companies that we're doing our part, that would be very valuable.
President Fay, one, I wish it were that simple, honestly. Two, the insurance companies haven't waited for this to get issued to start doing that. They actually started a few years back. I can speak for myself that my insurance company attempted vigorously to remove me from policy, and I went the total opposite direction of meeting all of their guidelines, including removing all plants and bushes within the zone 0 even around my house. And if you're not familiar with the zone 0, there's a whole conversation. That's a separate conversation. What I got this year was a notice that they're going to drop me. So the insurance companies aren't waiting. They're already starting the process. They're creating the condition of necessity so that they can drive the price. So that's already going to happen. Unfortunately, we don't have a whole lot of influence over that because, CAL FIRE's issuance of the fire map kind of lays out a very dire perspective. CAL FIRE's perspective also is about saving lives. If you look at it from the perspective of what are the best ways to prevent life loss, that is how CAL FIRE is framing this. So in the abundance of caution, they're going to identify areas that may be okay as not so okay, just in case, right? So that's why you see these maps are so much more aggressive now. Now, from an electric utility standpoint, the CEC has not adopted CAL FIRE's map yet. So we're still waiting for that to trickle down to us and have influence over our vegetation management. We already have a very aggressive vegetation management profile, so that helps us kind of stay ahead of it. But we are, the definition of aggressive is changing, I'll put it that way. So there are a lot of things going on in the realm of how we manage cost, how we manage exposure to fire, how we manage water quality, how we manage getting water to where it needs to be, because water quality and water storage kind of are against each other, right? You're trying to figure that out. And it is, I think Mr. Obligolo said it exactly right, it's a balancing act. So as much as we could announce to the world that, we're comfortable that we are performing the best and that we are supplying the best vegetation management and we're providing the water in the right places at the right time and all our system is up and running, I don't think the insurance company is interested.
Well, I appreciate that you guys are all looking closely at these maps. I think that the degree of change for Glendale from what the fire map that prevailed a year ago to what it is now is probably a bigger degree of change than in some other neighboring communities who
Very much so.
already had more conservative fire hazard maps. You look at the boundary between Glendale and Los Angeles, in some cases you're on the same hill and it was bright red in LA, but not at all a hazard in Glendale, right?
Yep.
The same hill, the fire doesn't care which side of the border you're on.
It matters which way the wind's blowing, but yes.
So I think, yes, the new maps are probably going to save lives, but it's going to, upend a lot of different things along the way.
Yes.
And I appreciate that you guys are thinking about how it affects your planning and operations and all the people that depend on this system.
Yeah, I agree with what Scott is saying in terms of not being able to influence the insurance. Unfortunately, that's just the reality. However, our mission is to, serve our community to the best way that we can, and also at the same time reduce risk and liability to the city by making sure that our systems that would be used for fire prevention don't fail at that critical moment, like we saw happen earlier this year in some of the fires. Not necessarily due to the system being bad, just overtaxed at that moment. So I would just, that's why I was asking about those 28 projects and looking at them from a criticality of if there's potential larger losses around those projects, meaning if our system were to fail and something were to happen at the same time, how much damage, loss of life, loss of property would happen that would then have a blowback on whether or not we fulfilled our mission as a utility and as a city in serving our community and our neighborhoods. So that's why if there are projects within those 28 that, kind of meet certain criticality. When you think about worst-case scenarios, I would encourage us to really prioritize those and not wait for the whole 5-year plan to bake at the same time, because 5 years is a really long time. These projects take time, so I wouldn't want us to wait 5 years to get it all baked in, then another couple years to actually do the work. Now we're coming up on a decade to get to the improvement that we need. Risk-based is what I'm encouraging us to look at. If we have things within that 28 that are really potentially high risk, not just in terms of the infrastructure, but the elements around it that infrastructure is serving, and the fire risks that exist, then we should see if there's a way to get at those sooner rather than later, and not
Absolutely.
wait for everything to bake at the same time.
Absolutely, Commissioner, and that is a plan.
Thank you.
I'll go a step further and say that when you're talking about $35 million a year, that's if we were doing it linearly. And I don't think it doesn't make a lot of sense once we get this report back and kind of define the workflow that will need to happen. We'll probably need to spend a larger sum of money in the initial 5 years than we expect to spend going outwards over the 20-year period, just because, and I've had this conversation on the electric side also, we need to get ahead of it. And yes, we discussed deferred maintenance. We just discussed, in general, a different way of managing systems. We don't have those options anymore. So we do have to be more aggressive in our approach, and it's far more likely that we're going to have to spend more money sooner.
Which might mean spending less money overall, right? If we're
ultimately, yes,
avoiding some cost escalations, future years, and things like that.
Yes, but if you want to go the cost dollar average, sure. Look over time, absolutely, it'll cost less.
Well, I appreciate you guys taking this seriously and bringing this back to the commission and adding this layer on top of the work you're already doing related to the fire situation. It's critically important, and I'm glad we all appreciate and understand the role we play in fire preparedness and response. It's a really important part of this department that we don't always talk about as much, but is very critical. So thank you very much.
Okay, I think next subject you guys will find near and dear to your hearts, curbside EV charging models. We have Mr. Salazar to kick us off.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and President Fay. I'm Brian Salazar, Business Transformation Manager. Today I'm here to share with you some emerging market solutions intended to address the growing need for electric vehicle charging infrastructure, which has generated some interest among some city leadership as well as some vendors. Should I start over? Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioners and President Fay. I'm Brian Salazar, a Business Transformation Manager. Today I'm here to share with you some emerging technologies, or actually emerging market solutions that are intended to address the need for growing EV infrastructure, which has generated some interest among leadership in the city as well as some vendors. So the intent of this presentation is to share some high-level detail of some EV charging solutions and solicit input from the GWP Commission to assist in identifying policy priorities as we prepare our recommendations to City Council. So I'm going to jump into 4 different models. First model here is a public-private partnership where the selected vendor engages with private commercial property owners to use excess load from their businesses to support the installation of curbside EV chargers at no cost to the city. Under this type of model, no expensive infrastructure upgrades are required, and the vendor and property owners enter into a revenue sharing contract where the property owner has the opportunity to earn up to about 6 cents per kilowatt hour. This model can also include a bring your own cable approach, which is intended to reduce maintenance costs and decrease EV charger downtime.
One question just to clarify, we're talking about the public right-of-way, so the property owner here is the city of Glendale?
No, so the property owner in this type of situation would be most likely a commercial type or an industrial type of facility that has excess load on their system that they can power EV chargers through.
And the physical location of these chargers would be in that facility's parking lot?
It could be either in the parking lot, or if the property allows, it could be on a public right-of-way curbside.
Okay.
Location.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
So just to be clear, we're talking about having a private entity with this model install chargers curbside in the public right-of-way and feed it from their service.
That is correct. That is correct. Yes, it's an emerging technology or emerging approach. City of Boston just, I think recently, within the last two years, hired a company to do just this, as well as Alameda. I think Alameda just signed a contract this year with a company to do something very similar.
And to your knowledge, that bring your own cable approach, I know it's widespread in Europe. I'm not aware of any utility, at least in the US or any city in the US, that goes with that approach. Maybe I'm mistaken, but is that something new here, or?
It is pretty new. It is new. As I mentioned, the company that's partnering with Alameda and Boston is doing this approach. The company actually provides a free cable, charging cable, to customers who sign up for the service. And as you mentioned, it is prominent in Europe. And I think it's a great idea because one of the most common causes of downtime for our electric vehicle chargers is cable damage.
And let's not paint too rosy, it's cable theft.
Cable theft, cable
Right.
damage, yes.
And I think from my experience, even if the cable's there, it's covered in filth and oil and you don't want to touch it because the last guy left it laying on the ground. So there's definitely kind of a user experience element to it as well.
Yeah, it's very true.
And sorry, Brian, if you can go back to that.
Sure.
So what, I missed it. What is the 18 cents per kilowatt hour? What vendor are we talking about? Is that the property owner? Because the property owner, you're saying it's going to receive.
Right. So under this
6
type
cents.
of partnership, the vendor actually partners privately with the property owner, and they enter into a contract between the two entities on a revenue sharing type of contract. And so basically what would happen is the vendor would install a separate meter. They would collect their revenue through the EV charging, and then they would provide a revenue stream to the property owner for allowing them to tap into their electrical service.
So would that be, let's say the electric rate is, let's say 25 cents per kilowatt hour. Are we basically with this model that will be allowed to charge like 24 more cents on top of the rate?
That is correct. Under this, yes, that is correct. So under this model, they would charge an additional rate on top of that. Further in this presentation, I have a slide that shows some estimations of what those rates could look like under each of these models.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Model 2 is very similar, except there is no private partnership between the vendor and any of the private property owners. So this model is a public asset private operation. So the vendor would come in, install EV chargers in the public right-of-way at no cost to the city. The city would have less oversight over how much they would charge and more oversight over where the location would be based on our ability to provide the electrical infrastructure. The vendor owns and operates the EV chargers, and then they can also partner individually with private property owners, but that's between them. It wouldn't have anything to do with the city. All right, so we would do an RFP and allow a vendor to come into the city, whether it's through a franchise or a licensee. Those are details we have yet to determine how to approach, but it would include a number of divisions and departments, including GWP, Public Works, most likely CDD, potentially Planning and Zoning. But that's why we're here today, to share these ideas and to get your input on how we should address our public policy going forward.
And just for me to understand this approach better, basically the vendor comes in, no private owner or private property owner is involved. They get to install basically chargers, let's say on Brand Boulevard. And as far as the electric service, they basically it's going to be like any other electric service request, right? They just get a service from GWP and operate their chargers and get to charge. How would the rate be in this scenario?
Right, so under this type of model, we would anticipate the rate to be a little bit higher than the previous model that we spoke about, because under this model, the vendor would be owning, operating 100%. They would be installing the chargers, they would be owning them, they would be operating them, and so we would expect that they would have to have a higher rate to recover their costs.
But don't they do that with the previous model as well? They install and maintain the chargers there too.
Yeah,
So.
I think the big difference between the two models is the partnership between the private property owner works when the private property owner has excess load to provide to the vendor without significant upgrades. And so with the previous model, you don't have the significant upgrades. With this model, if the vendor has the appetite to install, 10 chargers on one block, and it requires switchgear, transformer, pedestal, all of that, those are additional costs that they would have to recover, which would hence
I think that would be a little bit challenging.
increase the rate. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Model 3 is our current model you're familiar with. So city ownership and operation. We currently own 84 EV charging stations across 11 locations. And as you may be aware, we recently experienced a disruption to our service due to Shell Recharge's departure from providing network services to POUs. However, we recently established a new network provider and are in the process of getting all those chargers back up in operation. The fourth model is a hybrid between what we're currently doing, so maintaining the city-owned infrastructure, and then adding a layer, either Model 1 or Model 2 to the mix to increase deployment. Okay, so I have a couple comparison tables here. There's a lot to digest here, so I anticipate when we get into question and answers, we're gonna come back to this. But what I want to highlight on this is what everybody would be probably most interested in knowing is what is the impact to our customer, right? So you'd mentioned already about rates. So when we look at ratepayer impact on these, as we kind of discussed a little bit already, the private ownership model would have some impact on the cost of electricity for those EV chargers. The private ownership might have a little bit more because under that situation, the vendor has a little bit more money to recover. The utility ownership, we try to provide the lowest rates possible as usual. That's probably gonna be the lowest rate. And then the hybrid might just be a perfect union. Another comparison table kind of showing the very similar details that I just spoke about. We can come back to this under question and answer. So this is the slide that I was referring to, some very high level estimations. This slide is intended to be for illustrative purposes only. So if you look at the city ownership rate, approximately 33 cents per kilowatt based on our current electricity rates. For 1,000 kilowatt hours, that comes out to about $330. Under the third-party partnership, we anticipate adding about 18 cents to that, which gets us closer to roughly 50 cents. Third-party private, we would anticipate that being a little bit higher. And then the hybrid is kind of a mixture or an average of the two. Okay, another slide that has a lot of information. The 2025 column contains all the same information. So as I mentioned, under our city-owned EV charger infrastructure program, we have 84 chargers. The amount of credits we have in the LCFS program, currently LCF credits are valued at around $50, and the credits that we have put that valuation at about 4.5 million. So if you look at column 2030, the main difference here, what you want to look at is the city ownership. If our goal is to install by 2030 up to 400 public EV charging stations, the capital expense to do that will eat up, a lot of our LCFS funds, which is how we intend to use that money. That's what it's there for. And then if we were to combine our current program with one of the other two programs, the third-party partnership or the third-party private, we would gain additional public EV charging infrastructure, which would also continue to reduce our LCFS balance as we are continuing to install our own infrastructure. But basically, if we were to stop our own infrastructure, you would see that our LCFS credits would, our valuation would increase significantly. We would need to find other ways to spend that money, right? So we don't intend to stop our program in-house, but we do want to find ways to increase deployment of EV chargers across the city. So to conclude, we're here today to seek input from the commission in preparation for our recommendations to City Council to determine the preferred model for implementation. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Questions from the commission?
Do you have recommendations?
I do. I think I've made it clear that we intend to continue our city-owned development program. I do think that the public or the private partnership with vendors would be a good route. I'm not sure if our city is quite ready for a bring your own cable approach. However, I do feel like that is a good system to try, given the challenges that we've had with cable management. Even when you install a cable management system on a charger, if the cable management system doesn't work appropriately, the cable gets left on the ground, and the next person who drives up to charge the vehicle runs over the cable and destroys it and can't charge the vehicle. It's human nature. I don't quite understand, but it happens every day. So I think that approach would be worth exploring. I think the totally private option is more hands-off, so it's less resource intensive for the utility. However, it does impact the rates of EV charging more. So I don't know if that's something that we need to consider, but I think overall, what we're looking for is reliability. We want people to be able to pull up to a charger and to be able to charge. So if we eliminate cable damage, that's a plus. If we bring in another vendor, whether it's Model 1 or 2, that has a drive and incentive to increase deployment of EV chargers, I think that's a plus as well. So I think a combination of the two would be good.
If you don't mind, I'll clarify one other thing. Under Model 2, there's kind of like this subset, right? There is the option for quick or early adoption of vendors coming in and being able to get installations done relatively quickly. That would be us, and we're kind of doing this right now where we've identified areas in our system that electrically can support additional chargers and correlate to areas that we do need chargers in. So if we were to issue an RFP, we could probably attract vendors to get installations done relatively quickly under those premises. And that might give us some flexibility to put caps on the amount of increases that can be given, after a certain amount of years. but every vendor is going to want to recoup their costs relatively quickly. So what we don't want to do is issue RFPs out there, get vendors stimulated, and then tell them, great, but you can't recoup your costs in the first 5 years. You have to do it over the next 20. Because then they're going to go, no, thank you, goodbye, right? So there's a balance. So I just want to mention that for under Model 2, there's this kind of narrow subset of low-hanging fruit that we can probably get in the short term, but it's not a lasting approach. It's just a near-term approach.
Would you consider what's been installed at Pacific Community Center as an example of Model 2?
No, Pacific Center is one of our projects, city-owned project.
Completely city-owned.
And that's example of, I think, that's one of the projects that we need to redo.
And that is why?
A couple reasons. So that project was completed, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. I think before any of us were involved in this program. For one, the vendor of the OEM has not provided a lot of support with our new network provider to get those chargers online. All 10 of those chargers are down. I'm
surprised. I think they're newer than 3 or 4 years ago. But anyway.
Yeah. The other reason is, I think, impression of control kind of stands out for me at that particular location. Whoever owns that property across the street from Pacific Park, which is where those chargers are, doesn't maintain the area, and so as you know, it looks trashy. It looks really bad, and I think it bodes really horribly on the chargers there, and you can tell one of the chargers has been backed into. It's leaning over. All the other chargers are just in really poor shape. You know, and to your point, they're not very old. They're a couple years old, 3 years maybe at the most. And they look really bad. And as I said, they're not in operation. So I think that's a project where we would rip and replace.
But the lot is ours, right?
It's public right of way. I'm not sure who owns that property, but before we rip and replace, there needs to be an agreement on maintenance of that. So there is an impression of control, so it looks clean.
On slide 9, where you've got the annual charging cost comparison, and you say city ownership 33 cents, just a small question, does that build in at the 33-cent price, does that build in the cost of maintaining or recouping the investment in any way?
That doesn't build into the cost of maintaining, but we receive LCFS funds to fund that portion of the project.
So you're paying for it in a different way?
Yeah.
Well, you're asking for an opinion, I might as well give mine and then pass it on to my fellow commissioners. I do think that, I don't think, staying on slide 9, I don't think the incentive is big enough for private parties to want to go through the hassle of providing and getting into the mix of getting into charging infrastructure. So it's more like they have to believe in the mission versus the passive income is not probably going to make a difference to them enough for them to really buy into a project. So I think we do have a mission as a utility and as a city to do what we can to further the availability of charging, because that's a direct, there's a direct relationship there with people, particularly in multi-unit dwellings where the landlord isn't going to invest probably in providing charging infrastructure, at least except maybe in some of the higher end, MUDs, but the medium to lower end of the multi-unit dwellings, I think that's a big challenge. I see it in other parts of the Edison service territory as well. So if you don't incentivize and almost pay for the vast majority of it, a landlord won't do it. The reason I bring that up is that's where the public charging comes into play. If we're expecting people to adopt it where they don't live in a single family home, you need some sort of availability throughout the city, and I think we have to take the lead as a city and as a utility to figure out how do we get more charging infrastructure in place. So that's where I kind of lean on towards the city ownership side of things. You know, I could buy other things at Model 2 since that's what you brought up. But again, I think the city's got to be the leader. It's not saying, hey, we've got this great offer for you, private party. You know, I don't think you'll get the uptake that we need to get this through.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Quick question. So the model number 2, the Tesla superchargers that we currently have, it's basically Model 2, correct?
That's correct.
And it works very well. I mean, I don't think we dictate to them how much they can charge their customers. They charge whatever they charge, and they just pay their electric bill. So for the supercharging stations, that works very well. They take care of their own chargers, and we don't have to do anything with that. And that advances our transportation electrification goal to some extent. I agree with Councilmember Armenian that we need to do our part to do that. So I think I'm kind of leaning more toward the hybrid approach. There are areas we can do projects very well that the private entities can't, but there are a lot of areas that the private entities can do much faster and cheaper, and get the chargers online, and we don't have to deal with those maintenance costs of the chargers. We just talked about the chargers at the Pacific Community Center. I go there almost every week, and I agree with both of you. I mean, it doesn't work really well. So I'm leaning toward more on the hybrid approach side myself. One question or a couple of questions I have about that Councilmember Armenian brought up, that 33 cents. I assume that just based on our residential rate, correct?
That's correct.
So are we thinking about coming up with EV-specific rates to talk about, to include the maintenance costs, the operation costs of the chargers, the back office support that we are paying for? I think my suggestion would be to look into that.
I'll take this one. So there's a much deeper conversation that needs to happen with this. So a lot of the reason why we're at where we're at now is because Glendale took the lead. We pushed on and tried to get EV chargers and tried to increase our penetration in a time when EV charger companies were still evolving and getting a foothold. So the product that we have out there is representative of the industry it was at the time, which was fledgling, right? A lot of mom and pops, a lot of new ideas, a lot of hopefully cheap ideas, but in the end, what it turns out is, buy cheap, get cheap. So what we didn't do in this process, and what the industry has not discussed, is if you are actually going to implement an EV charging infrastructure and you are installing it specific to support people who have EVs, well, what you're doing actually is creating a class, right? And it's in line with the premise of Proposition 26 or 218, the idea that cost causers pay. So I agree that if we were going to be very serious about this, and I think we have to be, if we're not going to jump out in the front and actually do something intelligent about this, we're eventually going to be forced to do it by somebody else. We need to address what the actual cost is for this infrastructure, and it needs to be reflected when someone goes to plug in their EV. And I'm telling you this knowing I'm an EV owner. So I don't look forward to the reality of this situation, but it's the reality. So I appreciate the point that you made. And the reality is, yes, we really should be putting some significant thought into this and figuring out what the real cost for building a system like this and maintaining it is, and it should be reflected in the rates for the energy supplied.
I mean, probably during the next cost of service study, we can take a look at that.
Yeah, well, it could trigger sooner if we can get our heads together on this, and I think we're heading in the right direction now. And if commission has some ideas on this, and if council can solidify on a concept, the The utility is already working with the other departments because there are other projects that are being built out, parks and, parking lots that chargers can be installed in. They're all looking for guidance from the utility, and we're willing to give it. So we're all working together to figure out what makes sense for the city from a policy standpoint, if we're going to implement these chargers. And all the things we're working on right now is bringing us to a head. So I think we're all heading in the right direction. How quickly we move kind of dependent on your insight and the council's acceptance of what it is we need to do, and then, the resources to get it done.
Just a couple of more things about, a couple of thoughts I have is, when I'm mentioning hybrid, specifically, I think what we can do best as a utility, as a city, is level 2 chargers. We have access to the public right away. We can work with Public Works to perhaps replace streetlight poles with chargers and have people bring their own cable. Or again, we have access to public right away with level 2. I think, based on some experience, the private entities can do the DC fast chargers better to some extent.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but to some extent, Tesla being one successful model. And we need to look at the usage, as far as Councilman Marvini mentioned, people in apartment buildings. They may not have, but they don't want to go to a level 2 curbside and wait 8 hours to charge a car. They want to go, if they need power, they want to go to a supercharger and get a charge in like 30 minutes, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Brian is already looking at that, and so just some thoughts from Mike.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
What I think would be really helpful, and we're touching on it here, but especially before you go to the city council, I think we probably have more personal EV experience within this group. It's really important to define who is our target user for this particular flavor of EV infrastructure, because that drives everything. And if you're an occasional public charger and you mostly charge a home, you don't care how much it costs per kilowatt hour because you're only charging in that location because you need a charge right now in this place, right? If that is your only method of charging because you live in an apartment and your landlord's a jerk and he won't let you put in a charger, then this may make it more expensive than a gas car if you can only charge at expensive public stations, right? So I think that's an important thing to consider on the unit price for the customer's perspective. So I guess the question, I'll put it to you, who is this for? Like within the whole ecosystem of people who drive electric cars, who do we think this program is for?
Yeah, so when we look at the curbside, ideal locations for curbside charging, what we're looking at is in close proximity to a shopping area, multifamily residence, and single-family residence. So it's a combination. So
Okay.
just kind of echoing exactly what you said, it's people who live in a multifamily residence that may not have accessibility or access to EV charging, or somebody who's doing a quick shopping trip, half-hour shopping trip that needs to plug in for a little bit.
And is the idea these are level 2 chargers or level 3 chargers?
These are level 2.
I think that the idea that you like plug in and charge a little bit while you're shopping is kind of a fallacy. I don't think anyone gets enough juice out of a level 2 charger to like really make that worth doing. And I think that the industry sold this bill. It's like, oh, it'll drive more foot traffic to your shopping center. It's like, not really. And with a level 3 charger, they're so fast, you don't really even have time to get out of your car and go shop. So I think I would like be cautious of that whole concept that it's some boon to the shopping centers. But I think what you're saying is if it's for people who live in apartments and it's going to be level 2, then probably the most important thing is that they're spread out and they're near the apartments so that, there are a few different options within a couple blocks of your house so that you can see that they're there and then you can buy a car comfortably knowing that that's available to you. But even still, like without the ability to reserve them, it's kind of a dicey proposition. And so for me, I think the best way to serve someone who can't charge at home is to give them access to very fast charging, and they make a special trip once a week to go top up their car, and they listen to a podcast for a little bit, and then they go back and they don't, but again, different people use it differently depending on their driving habits and commuting. But I think we really need to think about that because that's going to totally influence what program we build and what is our goal. So I would say it's important to be very clear about who we're trying to serve, because if we're trying to serve everybody with just a generic level 2 sprinkled all over the place, I don't think it's going to be very effective. And then the location really matters too. And it sounds like we're trying to solve a few different location kind of layers, right? You mentioned we want to tap into existing infrastructure, whether it's excess capacity in our distribution grid or excess capacity in a customer's service. Do we have we done that exercise to see where these map layers overlap and where are the hotspots?
Yep, absolutely.
And are there some good places where this works?
Yeah. Yeah, we've identified a few. Not without cost, of course, but yes, we've identified a few. And we think we can probably do, I don't know all the number of sites, but the key here is no vendor's going to be interested in doing something like this unless we can be agile enough to accommodate them, right? And that's why we're saying the low-hanging fruit is important at first. So we're approaching this as we got to get all our ducks in the row, lay it out all out on paper, and get our agreements set up accurately so that when we hit the streets with the RFP, they can move. Because any vendor who's going to be interested in doing this is not interested in waiting 2 years to get it done. They want to know, can I get this done in 6 months? Because they have the resources to do it.
One of the things that I've observed from using public chargers, and I think one of the things that makes the Tesla supercharger network so effective, is that they're concentrated with a ton of chargers in one location, so that you can confidently go to that location and know, I don't care if I'm in stall 2 or stall 10, there is a stall for my car at this location. So I don't know how that jives with our plan of like concentrating them with existing infrastructure or near apartment buildings, but is that something that you guys have considered versus kind of like sprinkling them around like onesie twosies?
I'm not going to answer for Brian, but I'm going to answer for me. Well, we have some issues with a focus, right? If the state is telling us that we're going to have 5 million electric vehicles by 2035, I don't see it, but if we're saying that and we're preparing for that, then what we also have to be preparing for is all the work that has to go into making places for these cars to get charged. That includes just standard parking lots. If any parking lot I touch to put a charger in, I then have to pay to update it for all ADA requirements that haven't been done. That kind of puts the kibosh on any work that I want to do. It also probably doubles the cost, right? There's an alignment issue. If the state is this concerned, they need to start supporting it. But having said that, we were looking at all sorts of opportunities all around Glendale. If there's an opportunity for us to get a parking lot, and we can work with the Teslas or anyone else of the world who's interested in putting chargers in, and we can supply the energy to that location, we're ready to go. I don't think, we're not looking at this from a limited standpoint. We're looking at this as how we can grow to meet.
Coming back kind of to the strategy, what, Brian, do you think is the unique contribution that GWP can make to help get more chargers out in the world? It seems like we have the LCFS credits, right? And that's like capital money that we would spend to help make this happen. We're a government entity that also controls, the public right-of-way and the distribution grid, that kind of thing. What else, like what are the special assets here that, why are we even in this business, I guess?
What comes to mind when I think of the answer to that question is, what makes us unique, I guess, as a POU is when we're exploring this idea of asking, let's say, for example, a third-party private to come in and install EV infrastructure on our curbsides. I think where we're unique as being the utility is we have done some pre-work already in locations that we have identified that we feel would be great for this type of application. We've already identified how much power we can supply, so we can share with those vendors what their limit is until a significant infrastructure upgrade is required. And so I think because we know our grid and we have access to that, we can empower vendors to make the right decisions. So I think that's kind of unique, not just to GWP, but I think for any POU. We have that information, so we can help inform those business decisions.
And from the financial impact, or kind of bigger strategic financial impact, the way that having more electric vehicles works out well for everyone in Glendale is if they can all charge and use more electricity without driving more capital expense, right? So we're generating more revenue from selling kilowatt hours, but we're not having to invest in a lot of new capacity. Is that kind of the general economics of this?
Yeah, it's the lower cost impact. And you're not driving it way up. There still is an adder, right? But you're not driving it way up because of all the infrastructure changes you would have to make. We're making do with what we have in the short term.
Because I think there's a lot of people who aren't going to be using these chargers, but they're all going to be contributing through their bills to pay for it. So I think we have to make sure this kind of pencils out for the utility in the city as a whole. And if we can explain clearly that this will help us sell more kilowatt hours with the same wires and poles and conduits, that helps keep everyone's rates down. And that's good news for everybody, right?
I'm not sure I understand the math there.
If we're spreading out our CapEx across a larger base of sales, right, that helps keep everyone's rates down, right?
Under the premise that cap is specific to everyone, yes. Right. We build projects that aren't specific to everyone. They're different. They may be beneficial to different areas, but sure, yes.
President Fay, I would clarify that the funds. These projects are funded through LCFS credits, which is not part of our capital expense. We use a capital fund to use these monies for these projects, but the money comes from the sales of LCFS credits that we generate through DMV registrations as well as fuel
So
pathways.
it's kind of like free capital that helps us sell more electrons and generate revenue that way.
Yes. Yeah.
So, I think in that sense, it's good for everybody because especially if we can steer the usage through time of use rates or incentives so that when there's extra capacity in the system, we're selling it to customers. And we can connect these with the batteries at Grayson and have kind of a whole energy management system. It seems like there's an opportunity there. And does the idea of an RFP give us the ability to steer the time of use rates so that it is connected with what's in the best interest of the city as a whole?
It's possible. I think we have to come up with a full-fledged TOU rate to begin with. Right now we have kind of an antiquated TOU rate. So we have to do some structural changes there.
And I don't know if this passes muster with the billing and legal rules on rates, but can we just say anyone who wants to build a public charger in Glendale will give you significantly discounted electric rate? And that's our contribution? Or that's not okay?
No, that kind of flies in the face of 26 and 218.
That would be kind of like the feed-in tariff equivalent for electric charging, right? Instead of...
I think I understand your comparison. The feed-in tariff concept, are you saying it from the perspective of someone who is willing to build a facility with the idea that they're going to recoup costs through the feed-in tariff? It's not quite the same, right? But I can understand the comparison.
I think the idea is it might be best to have our involvement as light as possible.
I'm okay with that.
How can we just get our LCFS money into the hands of somebody who's really good at implementing this and maintaining it and supporting it and, being a little bit more hands-off? It seems like we haven't had a great track record so far of being the owner-operator of these public charging stations.
So what you're suggesting, what you're recommending is a private vendor-owned system.
Yeah, I think if we can help make more of those happen, if we can use our LCFS credits or our knowledge of the infrastructure to get more privately owned and operated stations out there, I think that's probably the best result.
I feel like I need to share some of other programs that we have that do just that. And it kind of touches on Commissioner Armenian's comments about multifamily. So we do have rebates for EV charging infrastructure for residential and multifamily commercial. They're two separate programs. One's for residential. So we provide rebates to install EV chargers at your home residence, single family residence. And then we also provide a rebate for a panel upgrade if it's needed to support that project. In addition, and this one's more significant, and we've recently bolstered this budget because we find really high value in this one, is the commercial and multifamily rebate program, which provides significant funding, up to $50,000 to $75,000 per project for a landlord or a commercial property. They're kind of synonymous in some cases, to install EV chargers at their multifamily residence. So as of July, we've had 4 rebates that we've provided to multifamily residences for a total of 31 charging ports. And that's a program that we're really aggressively trying to promote. We have some marketing materials that we're going to be presenting hopefully soon to help increase adoption in that program as well. So in a sense, that's what we're doing.
Honestly, I would say the best curbside charging program to help people who live in multifamily housing is probably not at the curb. It's probably in their garage at their apartment building. So
I agree 100%.
To the extent these things are competing, I'd say, yeah, a couple curb spaces are maybe nice for visibility or vanity, but like, let's put the chargers where the cars are already going to spend 10 hours a day anyway. That's where you get level 2. People have a dedicated spot to park. Like, just logistically, I think it's a lot better from the user perspective.
Ryan, what's the funding source for that?
LCFS.
Are those retrofits or new builds?
New builds.
Have there been
I'm
any
sorry. The
In terms
property.
of the property, yeah.
No, the properties are all existing properties, so they're
Okay.
retrofits in the existing property.
What part of Glendale? Is there a
All over the
concentration?
place. I didn't bring my
That's fine.
maps, but I have maps that show by zip code how many chargers we've funded. Life to date for the commercial program, we have funded 211 ports. As I said, that's low in my opinion. I feel like we can do much better, and so that's why we're promoting that program more. For residentials, we've funded close to 500 ports.
So that's a different use for the same resource, the LCSF funds.
So those are essentially competitive programs,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
We only have a certain bucket.
I think we have a great program for people who have their own single family home and garage and driveway. I think the bigger challenge for us to solve as a public entity is to help multifamily and kind of close that gap. And I think the best way to help people who live in a multifamily building is to help them charge at home instead of making a space in public for them to charge. To the extent we're making public spaces a charge, I think they should probably be level 3 so that people from anywhere in the city can go there, charge, and then go home and go to sleep and not have to worry about leaving their car somewhere unfamiliar for 8 hours while it charges or trying to sip, top up a little bit while they're shopping for groceries. So that's I think the balance that if we had to come up with the optimal solution. But I think we should be opportunistic. If there's a park or a library that's in a great location, or there's this part of the city that has all this extra capacity on the grid, I think that's where being flexible and opportunistic would be really valuable. But I think overall, strategically, I would say fewer level 2s on the curb, more level 2s in people's garages.
There's also that one company that opened up a location, I think in Orange County, where they have multiple different types of chargers, and they turned it into almost like a little destination. So that there's actually a lounge, there's conveniences inside a location while you're charging. It's a new company, and they made a pretty significant investment. I want to say it's in Santa Ana. It'd be worth talking to them to see if we can help encourage them and track them to Glendale.
I'll say we've had a few different companies come to us and want to partner with us. We're always a little leery with the partnering aspect, and we are more than willing to have people come, a vendor come in and you want to build. We'll support you. I agree. There's some kind of cool stuff going on out there. the premise that you build like a charging lounge. And there was actually conversations with Erewhon, whether or not they were going to do something there. I don't think that ever came to fruition, but there was a lot of conversation about that.
Just one clarification on this. I heard you said this is specific to level 2 chargers, correct?
That's correct.
Not DC fast chargers.
That's correct.
So I agree with Councilmember President Fay. I'm thinking chairman or
Whatever you like.
we're not in North Korea. So that the commercial rebate, it's a great program. We need to advertise that. Related to this RFP, if you're thinking about basically issuing the RFP, getting somebody here to install the chargers and basically maintaining them, from my experience, level 2 chargers don't need that much maintenance compared to a DC fast charger. I mean, they're just in different ballpark. So level 2 chargers, they're easy to maintain and relatively cheap and easy to replace. So my preference would be for the city to take ownership and keep the ownership of the DC fast charger. We can provide more competitive rates compared to a private entity. And like I said, we can control it. If the intent is to issue an RFP or design build type contract for somebody to come in and design and install it and hand over the keys to us, I'm in favor of that. So I'm retracting my comment about hybrid approach. I was thinking about DC fast chargers and level 2s. But if you're talking about level 2s, I think that would work better.
The company I was referring to is Rove.
Rove.
Thank you.
RoveCharging.com.
Is there anything we could do looking at other incentive programs or maybe even like the direct install program for like efficient lights and other things where we're basically supercharging somebody to go to the apartment owners and convince them to do this? Like aside from giving them the rebate, could we give some vendor like a commission or incentive to like go install, go sign up apartment owners so that you have these in your buildings, right? Or are we expecting that people who live in apartments that want EVs are petitioning their landlord and then their landlord's like busy, but he has to fill out these forms? Like, I guess who do we expect to like make the call?
Right. So that's our thought process behind our recent efforts to start developing some marketing materials in-house. We're going through the process now is so that staff can attend various commission meetings and get in front of people who are connected to the landlord community, and just and further just share what we can provide. I mean, our incentives are amazing, and we're seeing some really good installations at multifamily residences in the city that we're actually learning a lot from as we start, I guess, reigniting our program, because it's been dead for a little bit. So there's some great things going on out there with the multifamily EV charging infrastructure.
Yeah, that sounds really promising. And I guess, unless we're at any risk of exhausting our budget for that program, whatever we can do to kind of bolster your marketing efforts, I think it should probably be beyond what you and the team can do at commission meetings. Like, we have in the past hired energy services companies to go out and market our incentives, right? Or to run those programs, or maybe to do the paperwork for the landlord so it's super easy for them, whatever it might be. I could just see there's kind of a principal agent problem between the landlord's got to deal with all this stuff for the benefit of the renters, and maybe for the benefit of future renters who are thinking about getting an electric car, but they're not going to do it until the charger's there. It's just it's not a clean transaction.
Right.
So that might be where there's some role for an intermediary to kind of bundle all that together, and kind of put it out there for us.
That's a good point. I'll also note and share with you that we do have a couple electrical contractors that are doing this work for some of the commercial multifamilies that have become ambassadors of the program. They've done more than one. We have one vendor that's done, I think, 6 rebates with different multifamily owners. So he's in essence like getting business for us.
Yeah, that's great. I
You know,
think
so it's really good.
there's a similar model there from like home energy audits and HVAC upgrades and things like that, where the installers are essentially marketing all the incentives that are funded by, Tech Clean California or the different utilities. So whatever we can do to cultivate that, I think that would be really great.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So I think you came to us looking for a recommendation. We talked a lot about a lot of different things. I think and on the process here, I think it's important to clarify the goal and the ask, because even with those of us who are pretty interested in this, are we talking about level 2s, level 3s? Are we serving, visitors, apartment dwellers? Like, let's be really clear on who is this for. I think that would help clarify it for the city council. And then I think the consensus that emerged from our discussion is whatever we can do to get people charging at home is priority number 1. And then secondary to that is charging in public. And I think what you're saying is charging in public works best when it's level 3, right?
I mean, it has its own uses. Level 2 has its own use. DC fast charger has its own use. If you're standing somewhere for 10 hours, level 2 makes perfect sense. But if you put a level 2 charger in a shopping center, if people hook up their car to that charger, they're gonna get very little mileage out of that. So again, each one has its different use.
Yeah, I think level 2s at homes and workplaces works great. Yeah. And then out in public, level 3 tends to be more effective. I'm glad you're considering to bring your own cable. I think that's really innovative. When I saw it in Europe, I was like, oh, this makes so much more sense. Why aren't we doing that here? And as long as someone's willing to kind of get over that initial friction of getting the cables out there to the customers, I think it would pick up pretty quickly. So.
Yeah.
And was there anything else that you wanted to add in the recommendation? So,
actually, I was listening to all this discussion, which was a kind of focused at the end of the story, what kind of device we have to use, where to put it, and these sort of things. But I think an in-depth study is needed about what benefits brings to car manufacturers. Are they contributing to this or not? Because this is for them. The other thing is the power generation and distribution stress would be increased. So all this power that we are using here and there, here and there, here and there, it adds up, and we have to generate that. So this generation, actually, burden is on the city. The other factor, I think, is this climate thing. So we are going to go with these chargers and all these things for the climate. So how that comes into picture? So the other thing that we talked a little bit is, imagine how many people have got that sort of cars. Are 80% of people have that sort of cars? No. Maybe 80% of people, I don't know, they don't have even car, or whatever car they have, it doesn't have that capability. So all these things that we are doing for who? I think there should be a nice study for that. This is my opinion, you know. So we're just jumping at the end. What sort of type 2, type 3? It's good for this and good for that, you know. Just like we are focusing at the end of the story, but in depth. You're using this power, it doesn't come from air, it comes from generation. And then it needs distribution. Distribution needs cable. Cable is a very expensive thing, you know. So you have to upgrade all these things. The other thing is, a little bit we talked about that city gives incentive to upgrade your your panel. But sometimes these panels are so expensive. You know, they're old panels. If they want to change this, I mean, this is a big story, you know. You have to go to plan check, you have to go all this process to change that and upgrade that, especially when it comes to higher than 60 amp panels, that you have to go all the way, you know. So I think this is all good. I'm not saying it's bad, but we need a little bit of, we don't have to jump to the conclusion, for example, this company is good, or to put here is good. It needs more in-depth study.
Brian, just to maybe answer a little part of what Commissioner Alvanesian is saying, do you have a count of how many total vehicles there are registered in Glendale addresses and how many of them are EVs? Like, what's the percentage? What's the uptake?
I can get that number for you. I do have off the top of my head the number of EVs at the beginning of 2024 and at the beginning of 2025. So early 2024, the registered EVs in Glendale were just under 14,000. A year later, at the beginning of this year, that number had jumped to just under 21,000. So Glendalians are adopting EVs aggressively. So when, you know, we had previously talked about ratios, like how many chargers do we have per EV, or how many EVs are there per charger? I think kind of like how Scott was mentioning, we're kind of behind and we're chasing in some of the other infrastructure areas. That's where we're at with EVs. You know, we have 84 public EV chargers. So do the math, right? 21,000 for 84. Now, there are other private entities, like some of the businesses here on Brand. There's some supermarkets that have some public EV chargers. So privately owned, public accessible EV chargers, there's currently 182. So between the publicly accessible and the city-owned publicly accessible, we have roughly 260 public EV chargers available in the city of Glendale. And just kind of how we're thinking about how many chargers are available total when you add in how much we've added for the rebate, so on and so forth, right? So we do understand how many EVs are in Glendale. So in the beginning of 26, we're expecting that number to be upwards of maybe 30,000.
We'll have to see what happens post federal tax incentive, but
that's true.
As much as I'm passionate about EVs, because that's all we drive in our family, but it's still, I mean, 30% plus increase is still much higher than the national average, is the point I think you're trying to make. So
yes.
That's just to answer a little part of what you're asking.
Yeah.
And those figures are great. Do we have the ability to split that by single family home versus not single family home?
Well, there probably is a way. And I'll look into that.
Yeah, I think that would be useful to know as a starting point, but also to kind of track like our progress. Because I think if you want to get an EV and you have a single family home, that's a pretty personal decision contained within your own pocketbook. But for people in a multifamily residence, they have some externalities. They need a little help from the city to kind of close that gap. And so I think that's really what we should be measuring for success is how are we able to move the needle in terms of multifamily dwellings that have EVs. Agreed.
And then I have one more follow-up just to address one of the comments from Commissioner Alvanesian. In regards, you had mentioned the expense associated with a panel upgrade. We recently had one of our multifamily rebate applicants do a project where they weren't required to upgrade their service panel. And the way that they did that is an example of the future of EV charging, right? So what this contractor did was he installed load management systems on every single charger. And so he was able to reduce the overall cost of the project by not increasing the panel. So he's not increasing load on that facility at all. but he has managed charging on all 7 of the chargers. And that's the future of EV charging. There's no way that we could provide 100% charging to all EV chargers all the time. That just will never happen.
And to our earlier conversation about the economics for us as utility, that project has 0 extra capacity required from the utility to serve those 7 EVs, right? They're using the existing cables and capacity ratings that we're giving them right now, right?
That's correct.
So that's all just net new sales for free with no new CapEx.
Correct.
So that's perfect. Like
That's great.
that's an ideal project, I think.
Exactly. And that's why we value that program so much. And we want to grow that significantly.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation and for putting so much diligence into preparing all these different scenarios.
Thanks.
Item number 6, agenda forecast.
So thank you for looking ahead for a full 12 months. It looks like we have a couple meetings that may or may not be rescheduled. I guess maybe January 12th. What's the maybe there? We need to get a room, or we just need to confirm availability?
All of the above.
Okay.
We have to get a room, we have to confirm availability, we have to kind of make sure that staff will be there, you know?
Sure. All the things.
Yep.
Well, in any case, it seems like will be our last meeting of the calendar year.
Yes.
So I wish you all happy holidays. Seems kind of silly at this point, but anything you guys want to add or special requests for future meetings? I know we talked at the last meeting a lot of ideas, so we'll see those kind of fill in the gaps here. I see some of them already are, so that's great.
Just for public's knowledge, we do have the Grayson Tour happening in a couple weeks for 2 at a time, I think.
And for public knowledge, one has already received the tour. It was version actually, and part of the reason why I was a little bit behind today, we went and did a walk around the site, and we're scheduling you guys up for 18th and 19th.
Look forward to it.
And you'll see maybe moved along a little bit further than what he saw today.
Very good.
Yeah, I appreciate the tour very much, Scott. Just one quick question on the future items. For February, I see budget and capital plan. This is the budget and capital plan for the next fiscal year, correct?
Yes. Current fiscal year?
Status, basically.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Current.
So I don't see, or I don't know what historically the new budget is. Is it coming to the commission first before going to council, or typically the new budget is not presented to commission before council?
Go ahead.
Audrina Sayan, Assistant General Manager, overseeing finance and risk. The new budget doesn't start developing until March, April, and we have study sessions, and that's why it doesn't come before you until it's adopted by council. It technically can't until it's adopted by council.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. That's not what I want, but I understand.
I understand. There are things that I'd like to modify myself.
So Merry Christmas to all.
Okay, with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, everyone, for hanging with us. Have a wonderful evening. We're adjourned.
Thank you.